game, like barely any change. But anyway, like, and it would alter like your appearance and all that, right? So when I first played it, I played as a Paragon, the whole way through. But there was a challenge from one of the developers. I'm not sure if it was Peter Molyneux who was the head director, but they were saying like, yeah, it was like it's actually rare that anyone plays like complete like asshole, right? Like complete a villain. And so when Fable the Lost Tales or Lost
Lost
Chapters, I think.
Chapters, yeah.
Yeah, when that came out, I went hardcore. And it was actually it was a little tough sometimes. You gotta do some horrible things to people. Like people that trusted you, yeah, I'm gonna kill them. It was fun though. But that is tough. Like and then when you have like a Mass Effect, which I played, then I played as a Paragon when I went through that one. Yeah, that was some interesting moral dilemmas. Did you did you play through all three, Pep?
I played the first two Mass Effects and a little bit of the third one. Not a lot of the third one though.
Okay. And I think it is in the third one, but I'm not sure. There is a choice between like the synthetic race, right, who has been like a villain this entire time, but then you're like, oh, you get more information. It's like now you're a bit more understanding of their situation.
Oh, is that
right?
the one where they had like the queen that you find?
No,
Is
it was
that
Legion.
the
How about Legion, the robot?
Legion is the robot.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
that's
like
the first one though. The first.
Was that the first one?
No, in the
no,
Queen.
No.
The Queen thing is.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking. It's been a minute since I played them.
What is it? The Rachni or something like that.
I don't know.
I'm so far like many years. I haven't played it since it came out. But yeah. So anyway, like you got a choice between like saving them and then like destroying them. But like it was like a really tough choice. I'm not remembering all the details here, but like it's a really like tough choice, and I had to really sit down and think on this one. I'm like, what am I going to do? Because taking the good path was like cost you something. Which is great. I love those.
And then all the stuff affected you in the third game too. I thought it was really good. Like the only problem I have with those games, and it's BioWare that does this a lot, is that like, you will play like KOTOR or SWOTOR or like even Mass Effect, and they'll do this, and sometimes they'll have like where you're like the Paragon or the whatever the dark side option is, and like to get the dark side option, you get the benefits like dark side points or whatever. But like the dark side option will just make it'll make sense if you're like, oh, I'm just like killing everybody. But a lot of times, like these characters are evil, but they're like, hey, if I keep this guy alive, I can use him. Well, but that's not a dark side option. It's just like you either kill him and then you don't get any of the benefits of keeping this alive at all, or you save him, or you do like the middle ground, which is like the pragmatic. And the pragmatic, you don't get points for either. And I'm like, y'all are really missing like something here. I don't know what it is, but y'all need to add something. That's my one critique. Kind of
I totally feel you, right? Actually doing these moral choices in a way that makes sense, like for the character and for like both sides, right? Like I think it's best when you do these choices and like there is a cost either way and there's a benefit. And also understanding that like not every choice needs to be less than a moral choice to begin with, right? Like it's just I gotta have an action to take. There could be a choice here, but like it doesn't affect my character,
Wow.
I like have you ever anyone spent time on, and we're gonna get started the show, so if you're watching you're like what the fuck is happening, we're gonna get started soon, but there is a website called tvtropes.com, and it's a great you know what I'm talking about, Gibbs? Yeah, it's fantastic. But anyway, it talks about exactly what it says. It's talking about like the different tropes that are used within like different media, including TV, right? And one of them is like like what you see like in movies where like so the hero goes through and like fights a big evil organization, and then at the very end they are confronted with the bad guy, right? And then like they beat the bad guy and the bad guy's like, well, aren't you gonna finish me off, right? Like, because we are the same. And he's like, well, and then the hero said, oh, I'm not like you, like I don't kill, right? And this is after 2 hours of slaughter of nameless mooks, right? Like you kill everyone up to then, but now at this point, it would be too far if I killed the person who was responsible for all this carnage, and that would be the bad thing.
Mhm.
Hey, you can change your positions at any time. You can become a good person and make that choice at any time. It's never too late.
Repent to Jesus Christ, and then you can actually.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, some people have that viewpoint.
I really love that website. It's a really cool website. You go on there and they'll have all the tropes like listed for each character, and some of them you're like, oh, I didn't even think of that. It's pretty good.
It's really good.
Mhm.
And so we'll get started. You should look at the evil mastermind list, the evil overlord list. You know what I'm talking about? It's a good list. You aren't Gibbs. You ever heard of it?
No, I'm gonna look it up though.
Yeah, evil overlord list. It's hilarious. It's basically a list of do's and don'ts for like if you're an evil overlord, and it goes off of the classic tropes that like overlords do to fuck everything up. It's fantastic. It's really hilarious. I'll send it to you guys. Anyway, hello all. This is the Rubbery Roundtable. We do this at Mondays 8 p.m. Eastern. We got a great group of guests here. We're gonna have someone else join us, but they had to be a little late. Yeah, I'm really excited. If you are new to the channel and haven't clicked away already in complete confusion, click the follow button. And if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. So excited to have you all. We'll start by introducing our friend Lactoid. Lactoid, how are you, friend?
He's a dog.
Another trope is the self-insert character where people are writing fan fiction, right? And they're like the complete badass. Uh, Getting a little bit of that here, but that's cool. I've seen 1 and 2. I think I might have seen 3. I forget. Um, uh, was that the one with like the Japanese gangster at the end? Was he the bad guy?
Halle Berry's in it with the dogs. That's the third one. And then there's a Japanese segment in the fourth one, which is great, but
I
it's
definitely
not.
haven't seen the 4th one.
Yeah, it just hit Hulu.
I don't want to spoil
Yeah.
anything for Lactoid, but yeah.
See what other adventures he gets up to. All right, thanks so much. Next we go to our friend Pep, back with us. We didn't scare her off last time.
Nope, not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Pep. I'm Art by Pep on almost like all the platforms that you can find me on. My mom's favorite movies are some John Wick movies, so I just watched the fourth one with her recently, and she was really a fan. So, in good company there. But yeah, looking forward to more debate tonight.
Okay, thank you so much. And we have our friend Corey Campbell. Corey, always like for an international flair is why we invite Corey. He's exotic as he is.
Clearly.
Thank you for coming through.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. Always grateful to be here, and it's always a joy to get into the great topics that you select. And also on the topic of John Wick, like I'm actually looking forward to Lactoid's reaction when he watches the fourth one. I think the fourth one is like arguably like either the second best or like almost close to the first. And there's like it's really long, but it's just like action packed, and there's like some really great action sequences and pieces. Yeah, but like somehow, like it's one of the few franchises, as far as I know, where it's like they really like take it up a notch every single time, and they find like new ways to pretty much like really elevate it somehow. And like the fourth one is really something in my mind. But yeah, you can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv Corey Campbell 84, and on X and Instagram, it's Corey Campbell, and YouTube, it's Corey Campbell.
Traitor to the cause there. Okay.
Was everybody just shaking their head at calling it X instead of Twitter? Because that's magical.
I'm going to get this
Wonderful.
over with now. There's something offensive in one of the articles that you sent, because there's a phrase saying he wrote on X. And when it's quote doesn't say he wrote on Twitter, it's he wrote on X.
Yeah, you'll see that more and more often.
And now news articles, it's like, whatever. He wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter. That's like the common thing now. That's gonna probably bite for the next few years.
Let's go to our friend Admiral Gibbs. Admiral, thanks for making it back here.
Thanks for having me. I love it. It's always fun. Yeah, Admiral Gibbs and everything. Or a variation of. As far as the John Wick movies, they're great. I gotta say, Jason Bourne walks through John Wick if they ever fought. But other than that, yeah, it's great movies. And the fourth
Oh
one's
yeah.
really, really good.
All right. So let's get started. I think I picked out some good topics today. We shall see. Topic one. Recently, a Baltimore CEO of a tech startup was raped and murdered. The assailant had multiple prior convictions in which his violent behavior kept escalating. Yet somehow he was out on the streets where he was able to target this woman and rape another before he was apprehended. Should the American system of justice work like this? Is this the fault of soft on crime liberal policies? Would something like a three strike law have been warranted in this situation, and others to keep people safe from repeat offenders? So, like, I've actually talked about this, like, maybe I think twice already on the channel. Not like any pound type situation, but just like me ranting because like I was enraged when I learned the details about this case. Yeah, you have this individual who very much a danger to the public, right? We can quibble about exactly what should be done with them, except for the fact that he should not be like let loose on society. Yet he was, and he managed to add two more victims before he was captured. And so, yeah, I want to examine like why something like this was allowed to happen, and like what do we actually want out of a justice system, and along those lines. Start for friend Lectoy. Sorry, I have to keep myself muted because someone's like parked right outside my window, blasting their car stereo. So, we'll go to Pep.
I feel like in an ideal world, I would hope for our like justice system to be better at rehabilitating people. Currently, we don't seem to do a great job of that. We don't do a great job of setting people up for success after they're in jail, and I think releasing them earlier in situations like this is just not a pragmatic thing to do. I feel like there should be nuance in terms of what, like, particularly in California, apparently we have like Prop 57 or something like that, where what's defined as violent crimes are it leaves out a lot that like should be considered violent crimes. Like I think sexual assault or something is on there. Just some stuff where it seems like people who do commit these violent crimes, and I was looking it up earlier, apparently the recidivism rate for violent crimes and assault specifically are like 2/3 of people like re-engage, whereas with nonviolent crimes only maybe like a third. And so it seems like pretty clear that there's like a high danger of this, and if things like this keep happening where people are released early for good behavior but then other people get murdered, it just seems like a foolish way of doing things, as much as I would like it to be otherwise.
Corey, please.
Well, I pretty much echo a lot of the same things that both Pep and Lactoid just went through. So I'll probably need to be educated by Lactoid in terms of like, so I wasn't able to dig into deeper into the story. I just went by the one article that was sent. But like, it seems like, yeah, something has either like gone awry or like something is amiss where like they were released. Like seems like it's early, but it seems like maybe according to Lactoid, like that's how the system works, which that seems like it's a problem. And also according to like Pep's, or rather further to Pep's point, where based off what I know of the data of like recidivism, and like especially when it comes to like violent crime, it's like, yeah, it's really hard to justify, at least in this instance, as Lactoid brought up, like this person had a clear history of, I think, multiple instances of like pretty violent behavior, and therefore like a really high risk. And even though I am AI skeptic, I'm hoping to get to the place of like this might be a place where AI can actually like make useful predictions of like categorizing, classifying risk. Because like, even just from a human perspective, it should not be difficult to predict that this person is probably high risk as well. And I'll leave it there for now.
That's an interesting idea. I think we're going to have to go back to that later because that has all kinds of implications. But let's go to our friend Admiral Gibbs.
So I really see this as a twofold issue. One, I actually don't know that we should go to a three-strike clause. It was mentioned in the thing. I just was looking at it like this. I believe it's Thomas Jefferson that says, it's kind of a thing where you want 10-to-1 ratio. You want 10 criminal. Like if 10 people have to go to or get not, I can't even talk today. If 10 people don't go to jail that are guilty and one innocent person goes free because of that, that's the goal. But you have to draw a line somewhere, kind of along these things. And the other thing is we don't have that much room in these prisons, and that's part of the reason why we're having to let them go so often and so quickly is because I think it's federal prison 1 day is equal to every 3 days, so you're doing like a third of the time you're supposed to do. So it's real easy to sit here for us to say, hey, we need to like sit here and actually institute these things where they stay in there longer whenever we can barely house the ones that we have, and I think that's a real issue as well.
Okay. Up to the panel.
The only thing I wanted to... Sorry, go ahead, Corey.
I was just going to say,
After
thank you. I appreciate the kindness from understandably a fellow Canadian. But yeah, sort of to Admiral Gibbs' point. Like, yeah, space is an issue, and I don't know. Again, I'll probably need to be educated. Like, what is the proportion of like people in prison that versus violent versus nonviolent crime? Where I sort of assume, but it could be totally mistaken, that it's mostly violent offenders. And so, like that being the case, and also I would hope there's the question sort of what Pep brought up in terms of like rehabilitation, even though there are totally people that exist where it's like, as far as we know, it's like virtually impossible to rehabilitate. And hopefully we can identify those people. And so like, what do we do with those people? But yeah, if space is an issue, I would hope that resources can be invested in to actually create space. If America is such this great country, making more space to protect the public shouldn't be an issue.
Quickly, so it's 100% violent crime. Most people in prison are there because they committed violent crimes. That's actually mostly because people who get convicted, usually, I guess not in this case, but people who get convicted of violent crimes serve longer sentences. And even in this case, 9 years is more than a typical property crime is gonna someone who committed a property crime is gonna serve. But the recidivism rate for people who commit property crimes is actually higher. So I think it's like over 80% of people who've been arrested for a property crime will recidivate, and I think like over 60% of people who like commit like a sex crime, and then like pedos are around there as well. So there's like the violent crimes actually tend to recidivate a little bit less, but when they do, they have a much higher percentage of likelihood of committing a violent crime than the underlying population, right? And because violent crime is so horrific, right? When they do commit the crime, well, we all, stand up and take notice. This wasn't just like this guy like shoplifting. This was a guy violently killing and raping a woman, or sorry, and then raping a second woman too on top of this. So crazy shit.
And from what I understand, that when violent offenders reoffend, oftentimes it escalates. I only saw one site that mentioned that, so I don't have a good number on that, but that seems like a pretty significant thing to consider as well.
I mean,
Yeah.
but isn't part of that due to opportunities like lost? Part of the doing time and whatnot is when every employer has to do a background check. So say you do commit a violent crime, right? And they see, oh, you this guy committed aggravated robbery, right? So then you go and apply for jobs, and they see this. I'm not saying jobs shouldn't be allowed to check, but I'm saying that this is going to hurt their opportunities somewhat. So it becomes almost like a desperation thing. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened in this case because obviously, rape is not justifiable, and I mean murder is bad as well. But it's kind of like you do see these people go more and more extreme. And I think a lot of that is lack of opportunity, because if you don't have any opportunities, you're just going to be willing to do more extreme things to survive. In my
Yeah, I
opinion.
don't
So
think we set people up for success very much in terms of like when they get released, and I think that definitely contributes to this. But yeah, not so much on the sex one so much. I don't think there's much of an excuse for that one.
Yeah.
But so I want to hone in on this because you guys have saying a lot of interesting things. I wrote them down, and I want to go back to each and all of them. But where did the system fail here, right? Like, or if you thought it failed in the first place, and I mean um, where could should a change have been made, or like is the system working as it should?
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
I just want to ask maybe the clarifying question, at least based off of as far as you know, Lactoid. Like, is what occurred pretty much the system is working as intended, but let's say we'd all agree that it's poorly designed, but this is pretty much, it seems to be working how it was designed. Is that like a fair assessment, or
Yeah,
am I
so I'm
wrong?
gonna reread this, but I'm like 99% sure that it's actually automatic. Yeah, right here. So by October 2022, he'd earned enough diminution credits to trigger mandatory release after serving about 9 years and 3 months. So like it's absolutely designed this way. So like literally, if you get enough good credits, like the system just mandatorily lets you out, despite the fact that first degree rape.
Yeah,
Okay,
and it's
so
probably some automated
Mhm.
system or something, or just like
That
the
seems
standard.
bananas. Yeah.
And it's Baltimore,
so
and it's pushed by left wing parties. Not to get make political, but I mean,
oh no, I want you to get political. This is exactly
This is not
if
the place for politics.
so let's examine that then. So should people let's do it piecemeal, right? Should people be allowed to leave jail for good behavior, right? Leave jail early.
no.
I mean, it depends on what you mean by good behavior. Like, I don't know what this credit system is and how it works. Like, in principle, I'm like open to it, and I think it depends on the type of crime. Where this
Yeah.
is where it's like, yeah, what is the likelihood of like rehabilitation and like reoffending? Not that we can
Well,
make.
let's before we move on to the type of crime, just like the concept,
Yeah,
should people be allowed out?
conceptually, I'm not going to say all across the board, but like in principle, I'm okay with it being applied in probably most circumstances, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know if I
Um,
would say most circumstances, but I agree with Corey for the most part. Like in principle, there's probably some people who don't need to be in prison their whole entire life. Maybe they had like a one-off, like really shitty thing happened, and then they've dedicated their life to being different. But I feel like for a lot, I mean, just statistically, it seems like the majority should not be the case in this. There should be nuance applied, given like the. Never mind, you said not nuance yet. Okay, yeah, just principle.
yeah, yeah.
Also,
Just
not the
okay.
place for nuance.
No, yeah,
Of
definitely
course
not
not. Yeah.
here.
No
Certainly not
politics,
on
no
the
What
nuance.
am I
panel.
thinking?
So
Gibbs, yeah, just on the principle alone, should people be released early? You're muted,
Yeah.
Gibbs.
Oh, my bad. Yeah.
Yep.
So, can you hear me? All right.
Mhm.
So I think it really depends on two things, whether or not you think what principle it is, right? So, if your principle is, hey, they just need to go there and they need to spend the time and do the time, then yeah, there's not really a good reason to let them out. But if you're sitting here, I don't really know the reason behind why they implemented the good behavior credit system in the first place. My thinking is because it's overcrowding, and it's better to like, hey, we're gonna reward these people for getting out, uh, you know, because they've been good in prison and we don't have room for them, then sure, then I think it does have some merit. But if it's like just because hey we think it's rehabilitating them, then that's the reason. Then no, I don't think so.
Yeah. So like I what do I think? Like I like the idea that, and I think it's true that a person can change it. We see it all the time that you go into prison, and not that it's the U.S. prisons are a therapeutic environment, but you get time in your hands and you get to thinking, and you can alter behavior. And there's also there's this thing about like I forget the exact term now, but it's like the ages where you're most likely to like do violent crime, right, or to do crime in general, and that like after a certain point in time, like when you're like I don't know 50 or something, like your chances of like committing another crime like drastically decrease.
I'm sure like
Um,
after 80 and
I
90,
I was
chances.
seeing 60, but that's what I was gonna say too, is that like instead of releasing people who are in an age range where they seem more prone to, just release the older dudes where it's safer.
Yeah, but you see that, and then you see these kind of crazy examples of like, oh, this 80-year-old guy came out and then killed his nurse and raped her and stuff. So like,
an 80
But
year old?
hopefully
How did
those
they?
are
yeah,
more of an edge case than the rest that we're seeing.
Yeah, a superpowered 80-year-old. Yeah, I think that would be edge case. Um, but yeah, like but so that the idea that people change, you see it like they get their degree or whatever, they start helping their fellow prisoners. So on that principle, yes, but then you know it's easy to say that you're for these things, but then the reality happens, and this is literally what happened to Dukakis, right? Was it Dukakis I'm thinking of? Um, yeah, in the presidential race, was it Dukakis I'm thinking of, against George
You're
W.
going way
Bush.
back.
George Bush, yeah. But like the whole what's his face? The guy who committed that murder. I'm sorry, I don't remember anything now.
Oh, that guy, yeah.
how I feel today.
I don't.
Oh god, fuck. Oh my god.
my
All right,
favorite
so
too.
I was convinced for a split
all
second there.
right,
I'm
I'm
glad I'm not
gonna
the only one.
fine. I'm gonna look it up because you
OJ?
guys are
Was it OJ?
no, not
Yeah.
Oh my
OJ.
God.
George, the first president. Okay, I just did myself.
Oh no, I know OJ wasn't the first president. I'm saying, what like
I
did he commit the murder?
I know you don't think that OJ was the first. The first president Bush.
Bush Senior.
He didn't commit a murder. I'm saying that he created an attack ad against his opponent.
Oh
And
yeah. I've seen that ad. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I have no
attack.
idea on the name though.
I'm blanking. Attack ad. Willie Horton. There it is. Willie Horton. So anyway, so there is this infamous attack ad against his opponent. I think it was Mike Dukakis, but I could be wrong about that. But an infamous attack ad where it discusses how a prisoner was released on good behavior, not permanently, but like for like weekend passes, or you could just like leave the prison and you come back, right, for like low risk prisoners. This one guy, Willie Horton, apparently attacked a couple, like beat up the boyfriend, maybe killed the boyfriend, I forget, and then like raped the girlfriend. And they used this as like a national attack ad because like the opponent had supported the program. And so like they like placed this on him, the Willie Horton ad. And so it's like utterly infamous. Check it out if you don't know what I'm talking about. But it's like a big moment in like American politics. Oh god, you guys can see my screen. Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. But yeah, it's a big moment. Uh, okay, sorry guys. I didn't realize you guys can see my screen. But yeah, and so I'm like putting this together that like when you support these policies and they are actually put in place, then like they're going to be people who abuse these, take advantage of them, and then there's going to be deep regret on the other side, right?
No, absolutely. I the reason why I don't think anybody should be let out early is like it almost seems like false advertising, right? Because whenever somebody gets sentenced for a horrific crime, they always put it on the front page, like, "Oh, this guy got 30 years, right? 30 years," and that's supposed to mean something. What I would like to see is people like nobody gets out. No, like the prison sentences are reasonable, and then nobody gets out for like early for good behavior, but people get longer sentences for bad behavior. That's what I want to see.
I mean, can't they just? I mean, if they're having bad behavior, what's bad behavior in prison? Committing another crime while in prison? Don't you get
Yeah, it
charged for
doesn't.
that?
Yeah, like throwing I mean, from what the stuff that I would read is like throwing bodily fluids on guards, punching
I mean,
guards,
killing other prisoners. I mean, those are
jumping,
probably things.
attacking other prisoners, breaking property, etc., etc. Like, yeah, no, I think that'd be fine.
I'm open to experimenting with. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Just as it depends on what we classify as good behavior for me, it also depends on what we classify as bad behavior. But yeah, there are clear lines of like if you kill a prisoner. But I could also see that as like, I don't know how much corruption is there in like, the correctional facilities, but I can sort of like see that being weaponized to a certain degree, maybe, or at least I have a concern
Yeah,
about
like if
Now
somebody doesn't start a fight but they end it, that kind of thing.
now that I think about it, though, it also could be taxing. So like, because you would have to then have you would then have to have like a trial if you were going to try to get them more time. So maybe what you would do is like you would send in somebody to like a range, maybe like just so it's transparent. Like the minimum time they're getting out is this, and like that's the advertised rate. But there's also the separate rate, which is like unless you meet a XYZ criteria, you're gonna hit like this upper limit, and the upper limit's gonna be pushed depending on if you do bad behavior or not. I think that would be reasonable. But again, like what fucking because I mean, we all agree on this panel that like the fact this guy got out in 9 years after the rap sheet he has is fucking bizarre. And I mean, the fact that I got people as left as this that are like fucking bummed about this when
as deranged as me.
the city of Baltimore disagrees and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Well, let the rapist out after 9 years. Like,
I
isn't that
think
kind of like fucked? Like, are we like
Well, I think the problem is, what do you think the solution is? I mean, do you think the solution is the three strike, and then you're going to have more people locked up in prison, and then you're going to expand prisons? Because I don't think the left is going to agree with you on expanding prisons if
oh, I
that's the
know they won't.
solution. And if they're like, well, we don't want people getting out earlier, well, okay, well, the actually a solution to that is okay, it's overcrowding. What do you have the solution for it? Well, it's also expanding prisons. So I mean, that's a kind of a catch-22 right there. Or you got to let them out sooner. So I mean, that's your two options, really.
Or actually learn how to do some rehabilitation. But again, not everyone can be rehabilitated, but it seems like there's just maybe a little bit too much focus on being punitive and retribution, and maybe not enough focus on rehabilitation. There are totally some lost causes. I don't know what percentage it would be of like 10%, 15%, maybe as high as 20, 25. I don't know. But I think there are some clear cases that you can have rehabilitation. We just don't really do it.
So we design systems for the majority, right, and not edge cases, right? Like that's like the only way to be able to design a functioning system. You can't take into account all edge cases. So is this so? Well, when I'm asking about like, is the system, did the system fail? Like, is there a way for the system to even account for this without having just like major consequences otherwise? So if you guys are in favor of letting people out early, then like let's look at the crimes he committed. Like this guy, he committed second degree assault, right? I think that was his first one listed in the article. Should that make you ineligible for getting out early?
I don't think that I feel like my number of things that would make you like 100% across the board ineligible would be because I can always think of like maybe, not always, but off the top of my head, I can think of reasons for certain things or circumstances where maybe it's not I can think of some edge cases, but I think that there should be certain things that flag people to not be automated for early release. Like that's crazy to me. Feel like there should be definite flags where somebody like goes and manually reviews and like looks over their past, looks over their current behavior, looks over like what their plans are out, like what support systems they have. Like it needs to be kind of like a holistic overview if people are going to be let out.
So if they don't have a support system outside, should they not be let out?
No, we should probably make support systems. We have some, but we need better ones.
And also,
Okay.
just to clarify, sorry to maybe derail. Just yeah, to understand the situation better, hopefully. So Lactoid, if you happen to know, because I think you mentioned it's in the article of like, yeah, this person was sentenced to 30 years, and 16 of the 30 was suspended. Do you happen to know like the cause for that, or as to why that occurred, or is that also like part that is as intended as well? Like this is
Yeah, no,
standard.
that is as intended, right? The idea is that you tack on, you create a sentence, and then like this amount is suspended, and what suspended means is that you're gonna get out, assuming that you don't commit some extra crime in prison, that's like bad enough that they actually have a trial and convict you. Um, but then like you go out on parole, and if you fuck up on parole, then the suspended sentence might be reinstated, right? So basically a way of like presetting parole. So in reality, like this judge looked at this guy with 2 prior offenses and a first-degree rape and decided, yeah, 14 years was reasonable.
Sounds like poor judgment from a judge.
Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree.
But like, so system failing, right? Again, that's why I want to talk about like the system overall. Should the judge not be allowed to make discretionary like calls like this, right? Like, because you can imagine a different individual who might have a similar rap sheet who wasn't going to do this, right? So should they be shot of luck then, or
If they did the same crime, yeah, I think so. Obviously you have to give judges like a level of discretion, but I think there becomes a point, and this is like the concept of mandatory minimums, where for any individual judge, and I'm not even sure that would make sense here because the system, like, there's a different system failure in which like they literally had a automatic like ejection protocol from the jail. Like, oh, you met your good boy stars, so we put on the chart, and you got 20 good boy stars, and then you just get out. That's crazy, right? So I'm not even sure like this politically there would be enough political will to do this. But the idea is we don't, we want judges to have discretion on a case by case basis, but we also don't want them, I guess, abusing that discretion or not sentencing in accordance with what we are concerned about as a society, which in this case is like not necessarily rehabilitation. It's a lot more to do with this person. Like if they are out on the streets, like they are a danger, and so why let them out on the streets now after 9 years? It's just like, don't we deserve at least a 30-year respite from their monstrous ways?
so all of you are saying that when it comes to violent crimes, well, certainly not. We don't want to let them out, right? But like from what I understand the justice system, and I'm not a lawyer, right? But what I understand the justice system is that the crimes that are included as violent are more expansive than you would think initially, and like when you start digging into nuances of the things that people are convicted of, like I think there are a lot of the people, especially leaning on the left here, would say, well, okay, this person, well, they should be eligible, right? We should have more leniency for them. Like let's talk about like being an accomplice like to a crime. Like what makes you an accomplice to like a violent crime? Like if you hear that accomplice to a violent crime, like okay, well you did something wrong, but like it's easy to get that to be attached to a crime. And it's like what if you're like there is a robbery and someone gets shot and guy jumps into your car and you drive, like your friend jumps into your car and you drive off with them. Like you're an accomplice now, so like should you be like, because you were part of this, you were part of what happened, so then should you not get credit?
Yeah, I don't know I don't have good answers because that's where it's like, yeah, just by design, there's, as far as I can tell, you can't design for nuance into the system, and therefore you're just going to have just bad outcomes like these that occur. I guess I also have like questions in terms of like, when this person got out, like why were they not like tracked? But that's a separate issue.
That's another good
Yeah, I
question.
feel like it. Yeah,
Because it
just
seems like they're
hidden.
looking for this person. They're asking them to turn themselves in, right? Like, why is this person not microchipped, basically?
Do we want that, libertarians?
I was wondering.
Wait.
I don't know.
Violent rapists? Yes, I think it's perfectly reasonable to microchip violent rapists.
I mean, yeah, I think once you commit a crime of
Or
like a
castrate
certain
them.
magnitude, yeah, I mean, castrate them for sure. But if they, you know,
For
they commit
sure. The more
like
the castration than the microchipping.
yeah, microchipping. I mean, yeah, if you commit a certain level of crime, I think you've lost your rights as a citizen. I think like I don't want to go into like Starship Troopers and be like, yeah, you have to earn your rights as a citizen or something. But like, I think once you become a felon of a certain degree, I think you do lose some of these citizen rights. And yeah, we should be microchipping some of those people.
I think we have the technology, I believe, from what I know of pet owners.
Is that okay? But I want to. Okay, so let's focus in on this for a second, right? Because the argument for what you guys just said is usually deployed against child sex offenders, right? But okay, we're letting this person out for whatever reason. Maybe I disagree they should be let in the first place, but we let them out. But we're going to track them, okay? And so we do. Yeah, we put some sort of ankle monitor, and let's pretend like they can't get, like
Have a
disabled,
list.
which we absolutely can. But still, uh, what we found though is that like once you start increasing the number of people that are tracked by the police, that they can't actually hone on the person that's the real danger. So we say that child sex offenders are should be tracked upon release to make sure they don't reoffend. Then you're saying a lot of people. You're saying you're giving the police a humongous job. And when there is an offense that's happening, right? When there are dangerous people who are out there and start reoffending, the police have their hands busy dealing with all the other ones, like doing like regular checks on them, and they missed it. We've literally seen that happen. So like when you say I want to microchip them, I want to track them, like what you're asking for violent offenders who get out, yeah, like let's say he got his sentence was like 9 years. Right? That was his total sentence. Then he gets out afterwards, and do we still track him? And if we do, that's a lot of people. So what do you guys think?
I mean, there's a
So
good news, scary news solution to this, which is the good news is AI can now handle a lot of this
AI.
tracking, and that's the
Everyone's
that's the
stealing my
that's
AI answers.
yeah, that's why I wanted to get in first. I was jumping in first.
yeah, I think we were all gonna.
The bad news is it's also scary news because I mean, do we really want AI having that much power either? You know, that's a whole nother can of worms. But
I
yeah,
think it should have human review as well. I think it should flag things for like if enough like flags pop up or if particularly significant flags pop up, like if this dude like lingers around in elementary school twice, he doesn't just like, oh, if he like drives by at like 30 miles an hour and doesn't stop, it's like, oh shit, maybe he fucked up. But if he like lingers there a couple days in a row, maybe somebody should actually check on that. I feel like there's a lot of room for automated systems to be like helpful in these tracking efforts and then like assign a person to them once it's like, oh hey, this shit needs to be looked at.
Do you guys just do all of you agree that we should just implement implement what is AI? Whatever. What do you think in your
I don't
mind
know
is
that I
AI?
do agree with. I think AI is the solution to that problem, but I don't know that I'm necessarily super happy about it. And like, I mean, AI is scary for like a plethora of reasons. Like, I'm not sitting here saying the Terminators are coming, but you know, AI can definitely be taken advantage of, hacked or like other AI. I mean, I think it's a very scary like
Yeah,
slope.
sure. So what I just think it's interesting the
Yeah.
way that people like invoke AI, right? Like
Yeah.
just like, well, AI will do it.
I don't think AI
And
will totally do it. I think it should be used as like an effort saving thing to free people up to actually do more management work on the cases that need management and kind of like not have to do more busy work on the stuff that's just like, oh, this is inconsequential. Yeah.
AI gives them their caseload. That's what you're saying. Like AI, whatever you think that means, like
Yeah.
gives them their caseload. It filters it out, and so it decides this person is dangerous or this person isn't. And like
I feel
I
like there
just
should always be human checks and balances, even in assigning a caseload, but ultimately I feel like it would be a useful tool alongside humans.
like, I don't mean to turn this into an AI discussion, but like I mean you guys brought it up. Like Lectra, what are your thoughts here?
I think AI is a good idea. I mean, they can cut down on the workforce and save money, which ultimately is from taxes and therefore theft. Another thing we could do is, there's the microchip idea. Drones could be a way. Making sure maybe instead of like the AI actually like being like super complex, just do something like a GPS route monitoring. So like basically we release somebody and we say, okay, you are allowed to go from your house to like, and if you get a job, like you can like log it in the system of like, oh, I work here, and like a human can verify that. And it's like, okay, now you can travel from like your house to the to your job and to like maybe like a grocery store, and then that's like, and then maybe like one other place that makes sense, I don't know, and like the doctor's office or something, right? And then that's it, right? You can't go anywhere else. And if you deviate off the GPS, like the route, then like it immediately alerts the police in your area of like, this person has like left the route, go get them, basically.
Or the drone.
Yeah,
That's
and then we send the drones, right?
The Eric
Let's
Adams
talk-
strategy.
but let's talk about what Lactoid just said, right? So let's say that within a city of 3 million, there's 10,000 of these individuals being tracked. And what Lactoid just said is that if they deviate from a route, right, 10,000 people living 10,000 lives with and along those lives, an innumerable number of like life events happening, right? So that when one of them, right, or when some of them start deviating from there, notify the police, and the police will assemble resources to go get them. Like I'm like looking at the spectrum of all the things the police have to do, and to say that necessarily that this is the best system, that we just like allocate the police resources to necessarily get this guy because they deviated from their route, not even their you didn't even talk about their destination, right? That they could see that they've arrived somewhere. Just their route means that the police need to take action. That's so much resources, and like again and again. And then when we talk about at the same time, we're like, well, we need effective police, and we need police to actually like solve murders, because they barely do that, right? We need police to respond quickly to crimes that are happening. But at the same time, hey, there's 10,000 people with all kinds of reasons to ever deviate. Now I need you to intervene, right? Send us a cop car or more to intervene.
I mean, the response would be just like, I guess, limited, or I guess gate kept by just like whatever the needs of the city are at the time, right? So I can imagine us like a time in which like the police are busy, that like, oh, somebody deviated from the route, like there wouldn't, like, we put that on the to-do list to like figure out later, right? Because we got shit to respond to right now. But I'm thinking like, you got some cops that are chilling at a donut shop or whatever cops do, and like they get like a beeping on like their little like like arm installed GPS monitor, like alert, and like within the next, or within 500 feet we have a fugitive, and then like they turn it on like beep boop boop, and then like they know exactly where this person is.
They're a
Like,
fugitive
oh, like
now.
yeah, like
Well,
I'm not done. I'm finished with my donut. I can like get in my car and drive over there and get them.
let me ask you, Latoy, just because I'm just kind of interested in what you're saying this. That's like as a lawyer, wouldn't that be a slippery slope legal precedent wise? Because once a legal precedent is established in one field, right? It can also be, once it's taken and it's like written down and it's codified and all that. It's often taken and applied to other legal aspects. So you're sitting here and you're telling me, with that being a thing that like we both know is done, that you want the drones being sent out by a computer like on people, on the civilian populace, like that. That seems a little concerning. Just like a little bit.
The only issue with that line of logic, though, is that like anytime you reference a criminal justice system, you can always refer to it like, well, it's a slippery slope, right? Well, if we start putting like the rapists in jail for 30 years, who's next? Like the people who accidentally trip the old grandma when they're trying to cross the street. I know, like I understand that things
Don't
can
want to
be.
stop that behavior.
No,
Yeah,
that's not
yeah,
the
like
same
well,
argument
like
at all.
we started putting people in cages. What's next? Are we going to put people in cages over dumb shit, which we
No,
currently do, right?
that's not the same argument at all. There's
It's
a
the same
difference between
argument,
no,
absolutely.
there's a difference between a violent crime and the like level of punishment, and then us in the criminal justice system, and us turning around and trying to say, "Hey, we're going to establish national surveillance with drones and AI monitoring people." That is a whole different can of worms. It's not the same kind of like, oh,
I
slippery
think
slope
he's
argument.
advocating for monitoring
I think
prisoners or like released prisoners. I don't know
right,
about general population.
exactly.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
but it's
And
the legal
I think we
precedent.
have sufficiently demonstrated for a very long time now that we are capable of having a different system for specific classes of prisoners that we don't apply to other ones. And the immediate example I can think of is the sex offender registry, right? People might say like, oh, that's a slippery slope for there being a registry for like all criminals, but we just haven't seen that, right? What we've seen, which by the way, I kind of wish there was, but which in Wisconsin we kind of have that. It's unrelated, by the way, but it's not to the same extent as the sex offender registry is. And I think it's a good thing that we have a sex offender registry. I think we should have a sex offender registry, or just replace it with like a serious crimes registry, So people who like commit any kind of sex offense or murder or like, violent beatings, domestic violence, like people like they should have to, when people move in these neighborhoods, they should have to go to their neighbors and be like, introduce themselves and say what they did. Because I want to know if I'm like living next to somebody who like, shot their wife. I would want to know that because I'm not going over for dinner. It's not my.
I mean, that disallows like growth and change though, and I'm not. Am I muted? No.
No,
I
we
feel
can
like that disallows for growth and change a little bit. And for like, yeah, maybe for like a bunch of murder or like a bunch of rape, that's obviously not on the table. But I feel like if
a
everybody
bunch of
who,
rape.
yeah, just buckets of rape. But I feel like for sorry, that was really crass. But I do feel like there are some circumstances where like if multiple people are like in a fight or something and somebody murders somebody to defend themselves and they have to go to like their neighbors and be like, hey, yeah, I'm a murderer. Just so you guys know, I feel like that is going to make it harder, even harder than it currently is, for people to like reestablish themselves in normal society outside of prison.
Well,
I feel like it's always these edge cases, these nuanced cases that kind of ruin things a little bit.
Well, it's not even okay. So, two things here. When I brought up child sex offenders, I was working my way to the sex offender list, right? What we call a child sex offender is an expansive list, or as just a sex offender, maybe not child, but like a sex offender in general, is an
Yeah.
expansive list because, as Admiral Gibbs says, it did become a slippery slope. It became a quick way for politicians to show that they were tough on crime, right? I'm going to be hard on these criminals. So I added more crimes to the sex offender list. So we know like the ridiculous ones, like urinating in public, right? You can become a sex offender, or like streaking, sex offender. So when we're talking, so if there's a quote unquote a sex offender and we're danger to the public and releasing them out into the jail and say we're going to track this individual, well, who are we actually tracking here, right? It goes back to what I was saying about like, well, are we just tracking a bunch of like people who've done either barely anything wrong or something that like they're probably almost certainly not going to reoffend, or we are just tracking everyone, and so that we can't keep track of the people who really might be a danger. So
Like
there's
diluting the
that.
level of danger perceived and diluting the kind of consequence of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And
I'm-
So
then
here's the issue with that, right? There's a couple things. First of all, most of them are going to recidivate, right? So like if you get convicted of a violent crime, you're more likely than not to do it again. Which
sex offender doesn't mean it's a violent crime.
so there is a very 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 small minority of of sex offenders which got caught peeing in public. Okay, I don't deny that. And for those people, I agree. Like it sucks. Like I personally wouldn't apply those laws to them, and I think that we should be more reasonable generally. But most sex offenders, they're not the kind of they got caught peeing in an alley. It's they got caught molesting their nephew, right? That's they got caught raping a woman. They got caught doing this shit, right? That's like most of them, okay, right? And you know, it's interesting how this sort of conflicts a little bit, like with some of the narratives like that we saw around the Me Too movement, right? Where you know we're talking about like forgiveness and giving these people second chances and uh, you know what about the people that didn't really do something terrible, like why should we really be punishing them? But we know, just like statistically, most of the people who are convicted of a sex offense, like the vast majority of them, if they're convicted, they probably did it. And second of all, they're probably going to do it again. Like they're I understand having sympathy for like again people who are actually trying to change, but when you actually look at this like recidivism rates, what you see is that it paints a different picture, which is that for sex offenses, for violent crime, for property crime, for all these offenses, like the people get out and they're likely to go and do it again, and that's just the sad reality of it. So we're not like appealing to like the minority of people who are going to do it again. We're concerned about the majority of people who are going to do it again. And the second thing is, I understand there's going to be a cost to like police resources, and there's going to be a cost to there's going to be a social cost. They're probably going to feel somewhat socially excluded, and having maybe a little of a harder time like growing with the community and trying to like reassert themselves back into it. But at the same time, like that cost to me is more than made up from the benefits that come from our right to know, right? And so in my state, we have something called CCAP, which is public court access. Anybody can look anybody up and see if they've been convicted of a crime within the past like 5 or 10 years or something. I think it actually even goes back further than that. And for the more violent crimes, you can go back further than that and see, people have been convicted of rape back in 1990s, et cetera. And the group of people that I talk to most, besides lawyers, right? The people who care about the system most are women going on dates, because they will CCAP people before they go on a date. And if they are convicted of violent domestic violence, like domestic violence, battery, rape, etc., they get to make that decision for themselves. And that's part of what monitoring and public knowledge is supposed to be about. So yeah, I'm perfectly fine with like putting tracking devices in rapists. I mean, I'm curious what you guys think about, like, what about like forehead tattoos, right? So people who are interacting with you like on the street, like they know maybe they don't want to be around you because you raped 8 kids. Like, hey, little Timmy, don't go by that guy. He might abduct you, because he's fucking crazy, right? I mean, ideally somebody who raped 8 kids wouldn't be let out of prison, but then of course, that one guy that Kyle Rittenhouse had to defend himself against raped 2 kids and they let him out of prison. So I guess anything's possible.
As like a small aside on the women and dating and things like that, this is like a secondhand story, so I don't know, like just take it with a grain of salt. But I had a friend who started like she was on Tinder or whatever. There was this guy who like popped up as he had like he was like on a sex offender registry, and he was like, oh yeah, no, it was just because I was like peeing in public. And so adding like including minor things batched in with like a lot of very serious things can sometimes lead to people being able to dismiss the whole category and use it as like oh no, it wasn't really that bad, I did the little thing. And again, like diluting the thing, and why there should be a little bit more nuance, I think, and not include, maybe there should be more granularity, I guess, a little bit.
Isn't that potentially solvable by including like what they were convicted for? Or, like,
yeah, the thing that Waxford was talking about, that seems
no, I'm not advocating for a scarlet letter.
Shoplifting, nobody really cares, right?
I was gonna say the scarlet letter, right? Yeah, no, I feel like it would be
murder.
very good if you're on that list to have that be like actually the information to actually be there. That would solve for that for sure.
Yeah, the problem is when you're on a sex offender list. Look, like any time, like if it was me, I certainly am not. But if I was trying to date and I had to tell my date that I was on the sex offenders list, like what? Or you find out, like there's no way you introduce your parents to like, oh yeah, this guy I met on the sex offenders list. Like
I pulled their number from there.
I pulled their number from there.
I don't know if this is just like a Midwest thing, but it seems like felons have better luck dating in my area than non-felons. I don't know about you guys, but
oh my god, this is one of those like arguments.
How do you gather this data?
Like,
or you just
women
women
just like assholes, don't they? They don't like nice guys like me.
God.
But yeah, like when we're discussing these lists, so yeah, when we have a thing like called like a sex offenders list, like I don't know how you water that down. Like I just don't know that helps necessarily. And I think in certain states they do tell you like what the crime was in the list. I've looked at the list previously, and they do tell you.
I gotta say,
they should.
I don't know about these lists.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about these lists. I mean, if you can look up anybody's crime already. I can go look and be like, hey, I look up Lactoid, look up his name, see if he's committed like any crime, and like
I'm curious if you look up Lactoid, what you get.
Yeah, find out. I don't know, but you can find like some petty theft, something. Go in here.
Lactoid
maybe
convicted of.
Yeah, he's got kleptomania. We don't know. We're gonna go in here and you look them up there in the county. You can find their info. It takes like 2 seconds. Like Ellie, and then there's other websites that report it. Like there's background checks. It's not like you can't get this information. So I mean, personally, I don't know if the answer is more lists. Like more lists doesn't seem like the answer. Like yeah, sex offenders they have to put a sign in the yard most of the time, I think, and then they're not allowed to live within a certain amount of a school zone. Sure, that's great. But I have a real problem anytime we start saying, hey, as a government, we need to start like tracking these people more in depthly in general. Like, I don't know, like, I don't really want the government knowing all that much about me. I'm also not a sex offender, so that's fair. And maybe we need to like classify like maybe.
As far as we know, we haven't looked you up.
Yeah, I mean, but like, as I'm saying,
I'm Googling Admiral Gibbs. I'm sure
something's gonna pop up. But like it'll be like if you go in there, I don't want. I just totally lost my train of thought. No, I just don't want the government coming here and tracking too many people because I really do feel like that's a slippery slope we don't want. Like then what's next? We're gonna get the Chinese, social media
social
or
credit system.
social credit
Wait.
system. Yeah, that's not what we want either.
If I remember correctly, I could be mistaken, but if I remember correctly, we were talking about, let's say, should prisoners be considered slaves, and that's in the Constitution. I think you were pro that in the Constitution,
No, that
were you
was
not,
me.
Admiral Gibbs?
That was me.
I think also Admiral Gibbs as well.
That they were
Isn't that a
slaves?
slippery slope? Like, where does the slavery line end? It was first prisoners, and then what's next?
I don't know that were prisoners included. I don't know the answer to that. I mean,
They are included. They're I mean, in terms of slaves, like they are
Explicitly. They are the only
things.
group left in America that you could legally enslave.
Yeah, you can.
So do you consider that so would you want that constitutional amendment? You want that removed from the Constitution? Because that I think that's a slippery slope.
the slavery amendment.
Yeah.
That's the
You want to remove the
exception to
13th
slavery.
Amendment, Corey, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. I don't know. I don't think
no, Admiral Gibbs. He's saying the exception in the slavery amendment that says that prisoners can still be considered slaves or treated as slaves.
I am anti-slavery, by the way, to make it clear.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
You don't know the answer if you want to get rid of. Okay, all right.
I'm not
He's
really
mostly concerned with tracking and the government knowing, but slavery is a little bit on this, on the
slavery, Corey.
I mean, slavery.
I agree. You are.
I don't know. I don't know. Okay, so here's the thing on that with the prisons. The prisons are it really depends if you think prisons are remedial, or if you think they're like a punishment, right? And I think that's factored a lot. I don't really know that I would consider the people in prison slaves myself.
But I'm saying no, don't
Right.
put
So
that in.
I'm a little confused.
What you consider there. I'm saying we're telling you, right? Prisoners can be treated as slaves because there's an exception carved out within the amendment. So would you get rid of that exception?
I guess not. We'll go with no. No.
Okay.
Based.
That's pretty inconsistent with your position, in my opinion.
I'm not sure. I'm going to go with. I probably don't have the correct answer or the right answer in my head.
Okay. Pep, you look like you were trying to say.
No, you had the right answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that when it comes to dangerous things being kind of set free into the wider world of just random the general populace, we realize that, and somewhat guns are actually this too. Some places you need to have license and stuff like that. No, listen, I saw that face. But stuff like dangerous chemicals, drugs, we require tracking of these things for reasons, because we recognize that there's a danger inherent to them just being blah everywhere. People can just wander around with them. And so if people have kind of proven themselves to be a type of danger, I feel like there's some logic to that being a reason to track them.
And we take away guns from violent felons.
Wait, what? Yeah.
I think it's an interesting comparison, though, right? If Lactoid is saying that we want violent people to be tracked, right? Why not the killing machines they would use being the gun? Why would we not? God. So we can track everything else. We track the people, right? But we can't put any resources to registering violent or killing machines.
This does actually echo my view on guns. I feel like people who need them should be still able to get them, but ultimately I do think they should be a little bit more regulated. It shouldn't be just in case you need one, you can have one. It's not in case you need Vicodin, you can have a bunch of Vicodin. We manage those things a little bit differently for pretty good reasons.
Yeah,
this right here is why I was consistent. Right?
No. This is a false slippery slope, right? Because what they're doing here is
everything's a slippery slope.
We can take the guns away from violent felons, which we currently do. In fact we take them away from all felons, which I don't even agree with. A white collar felon probably shouldn't lose their gun rights. That's my opinion. But
I trust them the least.
Well, with a gun, I mean, they didn't commit a crime with a gun. I think people who commit violent felonies, probably a good idea to not let them have guns. But when you start tracking, when you target my property that I own, you are targeting me, an innocent
the killing
person.
Machine.
No. The property is part of me because I worked to own it, right? I am the one who worked. I
acknowledge that.
What if Vicodin is your property? There are so many laws around that.
There shouldn't be.
Yeah, you can own it, but there should be people know you own it. It has been dispensed to you. There's a record of that. If you sell it to somebody else, that's a problem. And there's accounting for all of these things.
But once you buy the Vicodin or get the Vicodin from your prescriber, you're not tracking you after that, are they? Right?
Exactly.
Even if they catch you doing it, then it's a problem.
Yeah, same,
La-
right? So we should have
la-
it like they check your ID. Oh, you can buy a gun. Oh, you can buy Vicodin. Oh, you can buy any drug under the sun, according to me. Then you should be able to like do it without having the
Lactoid,
government track
are you for driver not driver license like car license plates? Yeah, license plates. Are you for license plates?
only if you're driving on a public road, not if you're
Which
driving on
you
private.
almost always are. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but then that would
Unfortunately,
be
until I get
that
my
would-
way.
just does
that
donuts
would-
in his
yeah.
And then we have toll. And once I get my way, we're gonna have a lot more private roads.
but but you're saying that it's fine if we register that car, right?
Like I said, you should only have to display a license plate if you're driving on a public road.
Oh, so 99% of the time. Got it. So anyway,
Yeah.
but you're fine with the
And if you can still
registration
carry,
process.
and if you can still carry, at least in my state, you have to go get a special license.
Okay,
That's
so-
registered. That's registered with the state.
Okay, great. So you're in favor of gun registration.
No, that's not registering the gun. That's registering me, like as a concealed carry holder, right? Like now I'm registered.
Certainly, but like I mean, okay. So then we should.
I'm a safe person.
Well, again, we
Listen,
haven't
if
we
you've
haven't
never-
looked on the sex offenders list. We're not sure.
They would pull my license so quick.
Yeah, I know, right? He would be. He's a lawyer, so he'd be done. Sorry, Admiral Gibbs. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I'm really just anti-list almost in general. I feel like lists are bad. I mean, you start getting lists,
Grocery lists
Yeah.
and
grocery lists. Yeah, I'm very
Do
unaware of
lists.
everything, lists are bad. That's kind of my take here. I just like, especially with guns, and that's why I was consistent here. I knew where that was coming. I saw that one list was coming to another, and we got to stop the list.
There you go. Once you start like putting things in some sort of ordered order directory, then maybe you don't know.
Telephone books. Oh my God. No.
There you go.
Well, Gibbs, like I really feel like you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater with this whole like anti-list thing, right? Sometimes lists can make sense,
but not the slavery thing. Still,
No, exactly. Wait, hold on. He is being careful to not throw the baby out with the bathwater on that one, right? Like,
Yeah.
yes, you get rid of the bad slavery and you leave the good, which is
They keep the good slavery.
the rapists
Yeah,
and
exactly.
murderers. Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh my God.
anti-lists, but slavery it's nuanced.
Yeah, I mean, pro gun. We got to save the guns. No list for them. The government don't need to know what I'm doing with my guns. It's not the same. I didn't commit a crime. Why do they need to know if I own an M1 Abrams tank? That's ridiculous.
Nobody commits a crime until they do, so the government doesn't. You don't know who needs to know about whose guns until it's too late.
So I mean, if you could stop thought, if like we could like predict that somebody was 100% going to commit a crime, do you?
So
like,
we don't
put them in
have
jail
like
beforehand?
thought
Like,
crimes set up yet.
I mean,
So we
that's
don't
what you're
have that
aiming for.
technology. No, I'm saying that like it would just be better to like have knowledge of where guns are. So if someone does commit a crime, then we have like just like if a nurse starts selling Vicodin from her patients, there's like a record of like which nurse took things out of the like I can't remember what it's called. There's a word for like the hospital dispensary of drugs, whatever.
Yeah.
There's records of all these things so that it can be backtracked, so they can go, oh, this fucker did it, and there's
No.
recourse for that. You don't think
I
it should work that way?
Well, I'll tell you why it doesn't, because
It's
today
a list. Like
did- I
you
did-
heard them before.
I mentioned this earlier.
My bad.
Like
That's
today
true.
was the Battle of Gonzales. That's a famous day. And Mexico had a list where they knew who had a cannon. Guess what? They came and tried to fight Texas for it, and it ended badly for them. But that it's bad because the government, the minute they have all this information, the government's always used that to their advantage, almost always in a negative way at some point.
I do agree that governments and corporations largely, a lot of the time, use information responsibly. However, I think there are so many overwhelming cases where it's necessary to have that information that I think it a lot of times maybe outweighs it a little bit. And I would say there's a compelling reason to continue using it, even though there's been an abuse of information. We should correct for the abuses, not throw the whole baby out with the bathwater.
Okay, so we don't have to make it a whole gun debate. We'll have time to do that again in the future, right? Lactate will be here in the future, and we will once again have this fight. But lots of things were said along the way, right? Lactoid, being him, also talked about literally face tattoos for criminals, like Roman Empire
I mean,
style.
that's already a pretty good indicator, if we're being honest.
Like what? Oh, yeah, facial tattoos. Fair
I'm
enough,
just
yeah.
saying, like statistically.
Well, that's a person like covered in them. Probably not with the best of the decision-making processes, but fair enough.
What about facial piercings? Just curious.
I just say
am
anything about
ambivalent.
piercings.
I'm ambivalent.
Totally
on that.
social deviants that should be locked up.
I might have data on that, but I'm not going to share it.
Yeah,
Well,
could be.
Actually, no, Pep, you're here. So let me ask you, right? If you see a person who has like it's covered with like facial tattoos, right? Like, do you immediately think this is a responsible individual, right? Or do you think like it has no effect on your thought process?
It has an effect on my thought process. I feel like I live in an area. I'm in California and in a liberal city, so with like lots of artsy weird things. So I just assume that that person does not have a job that like gives a fuck about that. They're either in a creative profession or they're in like a very like kind of like they're like probably in a weird startup or something. I just assume that they haven't had to engage with like kind of traditional roles.
Or they're unemployed.
That too. Yeah, that too.
95% of
In
them.
this city, but in this no, in the places where I'm like if people are living here, they're very employed in some way. So
It's just I think that like a plethora of facial tattoos, like it implies just like a lack of good decision making skills because of like how many opportunities that locks you out of. But I don't know.
I mean, I can understand that, but there's definitely certain areas on the map where it's easier to find opportunities even with those. In particular, like arenas and sectors of like arts, music, things like that. Some weird like tech startups, especially like Burning Man type people, things like that. It's a little bit more nebulous. If I was like at like a banking institution or something, I would be shocked to see somebody with a bunch of face tattoos. But hey, maybe that'll change in the future. Who knows?
I think social
Oh no,
perception shifted
literally
quite a
never
bit.
change unless it's like this is the a bank cartel slave, right? And so we know like this is their job, right? Like employed by the bank cartel, so you can trust them with your money at least. Um,
There we
but
go.
we have our friend Joe Lewis here. Oh my God, Joe Lewis! I haven't seen your hair in a bit, and it has it has grown. It's like Joe Lewis, this is amazing.
But
This
it
is an
has. What's
amazing
going on? Can
project
you
you
hear me
have
all right?
going on. Hey, yes, we
Sound
can
good?
hear you, friend.
Cool.
Thanks for being here. We're still
Perf.
on the first subject, and we're talking about like whether the system necessarily failed, and this criminal who was let out and committed a list of violent offenses, and then ending with the rape and murder of a woman. Um, and at this point in the conversation, well, you can give us your overall thoughts on that, and then I'll tell you where we are in the conversation.
For sure. And bear with me. I'm doing some adjustments on this end because I'm on Wi-Fi, so I'm gonna have to pull some stuff back in some weird spots. Um, Generally speaking, for me, yeah, it seems like based on because I haven't read the article yet. Based on the content of what you said within the question itself, yeah, like the system failed. Um, Usually, I'm very less charitable when it comes to like just acts of violence towards women. So this is probably a situation where this individual should have been held longer, and if not longer, just kept him. Like we don't rehabilitate people in these situations, so it was only a matter of time before something like that escalated.
All right, fair enough. And where we were at was our friend Lactoid, being the calm, reasonable, thoughtful individual that he is, was saying that maybe for felons, ex convicts, that we should tattoo on their heads the crimes they committed, so the public will have an understanding. So, what are your thoughts on that? So, like, basically, the point is we're talking about is like notifying the public and
To
how can you get the
clarify,
public safe.
I asked people what they thought about it. I didn't necessarily endorse it.
Do you
I wouldn't
endorse it?
go
Let
as
me
far
ask
as to
you.
say
Do you
body
endorse it?
markings. Well,
For like rapists and murderers, yeah, but not
whoa.
for like
Okay, well then, thank
shoplifters.
you. All right, Joe.
Um, I wouldn't go as far as to say tattooing, but it should. I think it's fair that people should be able to access like crimes that people committed in a public database. I've always been in support of that, and most people who are in support of that are men who don't want their shit to be put out on those regards. So, I mean, like, if you do a violent crime, people should know, and people in the community should have the right to know these things. It shouldn't be something as so easy as like you swipe your credit card, but like I think it's fair to say like people should have better ability to access these things. I think it's fair.
So
That's
I
fucking awesome. Damn it, you're alone, Prime.
Hold on.
This whole panel
Yeah,
is united
it's
against you.
interesting. So like this, I wrote this question because of my rage about like what happened to this like poor woman, like the multiple people who've been victimized by this individual. And then now like I'm having to defend the left here on this, and push back against like the tyranny of the outraged here. But okay, so. And the argument that you made, I think, is a really good one. At least Black to when you brought up about women like using that list you were talking about, the CPAP or something list.
And CCAP, and that goes directly to what Joe Lewis just said, right? Most of the time, the people who benefit most from this are like women going on dates who want to learn, like, okay, is this guy actually gonna fucking like dismember me, or is it gonna be a nice time?
Does it have a
The
dismemberment
binary
clause,
in
right?
there.
Yeah.
Well, now
It's one or the other.
it's for rhetorical effect, but you know what I'm talking about. Like even if you don't get dismembered, right? Maybe you don't want to go on a date with somebody who like has 3 domestic violence incidents on their record, right? I wouldn't want to go on a date, even if she was really attractive. Like, okay, hold on. You could think of some of these.
What's the really
We're
attractive
different.
and
We're
You
libertarian?
can fix her.
Yeah,
You can fix
perfectly
her.
I can
aligned
fix it.
politics.
Men are
Oh my
self-destructive. It's different,
God.
right? But for women, like who are like smaller and weaker generally than men are, I think it's 100% justified to want to like avoid dangerous, violent men for sure.
I gotta say, I think that we're looking at this kind of like framing this wrong. I really think the real issue that this is having with this is due to prison's overpopulation, right? So I don't think the answer is necessarily the 3 strike rule, or it's definitely not lists. But I think the answer is maybe maybe legalizing drugs. I think that if we could sit here and like we could start taxing them. So I'm not a huge fan of taxes, but I'm kind of okay with vice taxes. If we legalize drugs, that eliminates a large population group of the prison population that
Weren't
is
we saying
committing
earlier that like the most of the people in prison aren't just from drugs, it's from more violent crimes though?
Yeah, but
Because
the
that
issue
was my solution too, was
but
like,
it
yeah, get
but
rid
it
of the like non
but it's tied together is really the issue. So you have a lot of these violent drug crimes. So you have gang
Yeah,
warfare
that's right.
that's heavily rated to drugs. A lot of these things. I mean, that's all tied to drugs. So maybe we wouldn't be able to help the people in there now. But I think if we legalize drugs, we would stop putting as many people in there for what would now be deemed like petty offenses or something along those lines.
And
I
I'm
agree with that.
curious, Prime. Then, since you're uh, whatever the odd person out, but like, what is then your prescription in terms like you definitely don't agree with this outcome, and you recognize that something has gone awry here. So like, what would you want to correct? Because you don't seem to want our corrections or any ones that are put on the table so far.
So to be very clear, like the thing that I wanted to do with this conversation, is simply like um, show how complex this all is, and that like even a person like me filled with moral outrage uh, can recognize that, and in fact, a person filled with moral outrage like me should, at that point in time, not be designing laws against these things, because that's how we well, I mean, the whole tough on crime arc in this country, which has disastrous effects. Like what happens is, so like this could be one of those crimes, right? Like you can easily see, because we've gone down this exact route before, where there is a publicized crime. It outrages the city, right? The municipality. Something has to be done, and so lawmakers get cracking because we got to protect the citizens from the criminals. And then whatever policy they create, like, tends to have like disastrous outcomes. So I'm just like trying to show the complexity of it. And I'm literally surprised that no one else here is.
Uh,
uh,
Well, no, I definitely appreciate and respect the transparency, and I also I echo your concern about essentially like being reactionary, and I wouldn't want to be too heavy-handed either. That's why in my opening statement, if anything, I think a lot of resources should be put forth to coming up with that algorithm that can predict with high accuracy, like the potential to basically reoffend. I'm hoping we get to that place because there are totally these cases like this where it seems to be maybe a little bit more clear cut, not exactly clear cut, of this person's probably should not have been let out maybe at any time. But we just don't have good ways of predicting behavior yet. But I think with the AI, I think this is where the actual application of AI is meaningful and hopefully actually beneficial, and an actual real answer as opposed to just like AI tracking people and like whatever, all that stuff.
Yeah, I do want to say also that I was like the whole time like we need like nuance, there's edge cases, there's like probably humans that need to oversee things. So I do agree that there's a lot of complexity and I do want to try to account for that complexity, but I do think it was crazy that this happened in the first place and there should be things in place to not make this happen.
Yeah. Which is fair. Of course, you did say that, but like once like we start like going down, like the options, right? Like I think people will inevitably be punitive in ways that can have disastrous consequences in these things. So like,
Is there
and
a
again,
reason
I'm
not
not
to solve for people being punitive versus not using a system in the first place?
say that again.
Is there a reason we shouldn't focus on preventing people from being punitive versus just not using a system in the first place?
Preventing people. I mean, um, I
Like try
guess
to find ways to prevent the abuse of the system, I guess is.
Uh, I don't know how. I mean, I don't know how you can, right? Like, if once we give people the ability to create laws, they will create laws in an emergency when something has happened. And yeah, so
So is your
But
argument to just not have laws?
no. I'm saying that like it's
we got a new
unavoidable that
Scott
like
on the playing field.
I was gonna
no.
say because hold on for to give it, it's got a little bit of he's not even here, but his argument is all laws are a slippery slope, right? Once we start with this process, like it's gonna lead down eventually to totalitarianism, which kind of somewhat echoes the argument that I'm hearing from you a little bit, Brian, right?
I'm saying that like reactionary behavior produces like terrible outcomes,
Well,
and that we should be aware of these things, right?
so I guess,
That's it.
Well, isn't that
I
I
just a
agree,
matter
but
of
like
I guess the starting point. Sorry to cut you off, Pat, maybe just
no,
a
go
quick
for it.
question.
Yeah.
Like based off of what was described here, and sort of like establishing, based off of lactoid expertise, of like the system appeared to be working as intended here. So basically, are you basically are you okay with this system working as intended, as designed now, and you have understandable concerns of like doing something different?
So yeah, I mean, I would. Okay, so I would do something different. Maybe with my non-expertise in the law and my my limited view of the possible options available, I would do something different. Like, should this person be uh, allowed to have like good credits build up for some an automatic release? Absolutely not. Right? Like we can say that like if you committed a violent crime, especially if you committed multiple violent crimes, like we let you go before and then you did it again, then I think we can safely say we can't trust you and that you need to serve a full term. Sure, I don't think anyone will disagree with that much. And I can say that maybe the system was like maybe like jail shouldn't have been where we sent this guy who clearly has something wrong with him. And he's been doing this for a very long time. I'm not sure how old he is. I'm not sure like when his like first arrested offense was, but like first of all, this news dude was definitely offending before he was ever arrested. That wasn't the first time he did a thing, like in 2009 or whatever. But there's been lots of failures in this individual's life. But once he had been, institutionalized, then maybe it should have been and something that could have evaluated him and given him the help that he actually needs, right? And actually figured out what the problem was so that it can be addressed in the future. So, like, as opposed to putting him in a cage for a certain amount of time and then saying, okay, your time is up, and then going back out in the world to just do the same thing because we haven't addressed the core issue. Um, or understanding that maybe it can't be addressed because he's criminally insane. I don't know, right? So like that's a start.
Well, then, like so far, anything that you said, I don't really strongly disagree with. Uh, where I don't see there's much divide, at least between you and I.
Did you want to say anything, Joe, and then Pep?
disembodied voice without a camera. My internet's all fucked up. But yeah, I'm with you on that, Prime. I just think it sounds like in your eyes that like yeah, I mean well, I'll speak for myself. I think it's fair to say that the system worked exactly as intended. Like we're not trying to rehabilitate people and put them in jail. So, and even when we punish, quote unquote, punish people, we're not really doing anything to try to change course correction on them. Um, so in a lot of ways, like the system allowed for this to happen. And then like when we see these things, just like people think like, oh, this is just kind of like a glitch. And it's like, well, actually, there's a lot of people who go to jail for shit and we don't help. And it seems to me like we should probably take everything and turn it over on its head and prioritize assisting people when they commit injustices. And then we can figure out those that we can't save or rehabilitate as we go.
One other thing I wanted to talk about, because our friend Gibbs brought it up, it was the idea of employers knowing about a violent crime. Since we're here, why don't we talk about that? What about ban the box, right? There's a movement that says that a person shouldn't have to put on their employment application that they were a criminal, and I don't know if that necessarily extends to that, like an employer can't like take that into account. So like separately, like look up every single applicant and then like run a check and then include that within their employment decisions. I don't know how far that goes, but let's just start with ban the box. Do you think that is a worthwhile movement? And should there be limitations on uh, what is hidden if you think that this is something worthwhile?
What are we trying to solve? I mean, like, what's it trying to solve? Like, the person still isn't. I don't know. I mean, like, I guess somebody was on the aspect of fuck them. Probably be like, you know what? Like, keep the box there. In fact, we should have more boxes for them. Um, I don't know what the box even is serving in the first place. So that's kind of where I'm at on it.
Oh,
Like,
well,
can't
I
you
mean,
just not answer the box? Like, oh, cool, I caught killed somebody. I'm just not gonna put that on my job application.
I mean, you'll find it in the background check, right? Like,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, what's the point of the box, really?
yeah.
Is there a consequence for lying about that?
I mean, I guess you don't get hired.
Yeah.
I don't.
I would go further. Not only would I allow the
Well, you want the
box.
tattoos anyways, so
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, that'll make it
I have a
easy,
question
right?
about the
let
face
it come up in the
tattoos, too.
interview.
But no, I think employers should be able to ask any question they want. And in fact, I think I would go further where, uh, and I know so many people that have lied on resumes and have lied on applications that this would probably encompass a lot of people. I think that lying on an application is tantamount to finance fraud. I would have that be a crime. So like if you were guilty of some kind of crime and they were asked like, did you commit this crime, and you refuse to disclose it, like you're essentially defrauding your employer into taking their money from them when they otherwise wouldn't give it to you. So I think you should be financially like if you lie to your employer and then you're later found out to have lied to your employer, that they should be able to like claw back any wages they paid you since they hired you.
Just fire them. That's always a seems to be the easier course of action, right?
It just seems to like not be. Not only doesn't like not seem to be enough of a deterrence, just given by first of all how frequently it happens, I guess anecdotally, but I'm sure there's stats on this. But then the other hand, right, like I said, you can think of scenarios in which like, oh fuck, like I paid them, especially higher paid positions, I paid them all this fucking money, and they had lied on their fucking resume, and it turns out like they didn't do shit for the past, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, you should be able to claw back what you pay them because they lied, they committed fraud.
So you're not a fan of the
I
show
mean,
Suits, are you? You don't like the show Suits at all, huh?
I
no,
haven't seen it, so obviously not. I guess not. I've
I
never lied on my
I don't think
resume,
we
not
gotta.
once.
I don't think we gotta try clawing back wages. That's not gonna go. They're already broke at their line on the resume, so where are you gonna get the money from? They're already poor, you know.
Well,
So
yeah. Well, this is a typical issue that like anybody has when suing somebody civilly. And if an employer decides it's not worth it, then then they don't have to. But like, let's say you had an employee who lied on their resume, and they got paid a whole bunch of money, and they're sitting on it because they kind of cycled it, like they cycle charge this, where like they have all this money built up from basically fucking over different employers, or if like I think during the pandemic you had people who worked several jobs at the same time and like lied about it, like scenarios like that where now they have all this money. Yeah, you should be able to like claw back some of that. I think that's reasonable. Is it always practical? No, I agree. It's probably not going to be practical, but ultimately the principle is like lying about committing a crime. Like if you commit a violent crime or any crime really, and I want to know about it as somebody about to engage with you, whether that be a romantic engagement, whether that be a friendship, whether that be an economic relationship, like a business, I shouldn't like it just feels so slimy. Like I want to know if the people working at my daycare have like maybe not even leaving aside sex crimes. Like if they committed like they punched somebody, I don't want that person working in my daycare. I just don't, right? Because they're a liability now.
Other
Um,
than
that's saying a lot, though, right? That's saying that like one person just because of one action is completely invalidated for employment. But it seems like you probably have a threshold for that.
Yeah, I mean, people can hire felons if they want to, but like the truth with recidivism is people are likely to do it again. And so if I know somebody's committed a violent crime in the past, and I'm working with like a vulnerable or sensitive group like children in a daycare, or the elderly or anything like that, I'm not going to hire felons. Like I shouldn't have to. They shouldn't be expected to because now I got to pay out if they go and do something horrible crime. Now as an employer, I'm liable, and now I got to pay out a bunch of fucking money. So like it fucks me over.
Yeah, I just don't think there's any. I don't think that there's going to be like daycares or places that are responsible for the well-being of others that are like hiring felons and shit. Seems like those are the places where they get this kind of stuff correct. Maybe not McDonald's, but
I'm just curious. I think I know the answer, Lactoid. But just to maybe confirm. Yeah. So I think you mentioned like employers should be able to ask anything whatsoever. So should employers also be able to like fire and terminate employment for any reason whatsoever?
I mean, yeah, my answer to that is yes, for sure.
Yeah. So like, they just no longer like your haircut.
But this reason, yeah, technically, I guess like ostensibly you'd be able to fire because you didn't like their hair color, but like that could very quickly go astray if it's like, wow, I don't
Okay,
like your hair color
I
being
can
black because
You don't like their face
I can
tattoos.
change it. Like you just got a bad haircut, or like your employer just no longer likes your haircut. You got a new one, trying something new. It's like, yeah, sorry,
in
not
most states you can fire somebody if you don't like their haircut
okay. Yeah,
not in Jersey.
legally. Maybe not in Jersey, but in any kind of right to work state. Yeah.
well,
Well, I mean,
fuck
Jersey's right to work, but we have the Crown Act.
Not
So
right to work. Fuck. Hold on a second.
Take your time.
At will employment. Sorry, fuck. At will, if it's an at will employment state, you can fire anybody for any reason unless it's a protected reason, and those protected reasons include the Civil Rights Act.
well, yeah, but from what I understand, like you don't want protected reasons, like pretty much like for
Well,
just.
I don't. That's a different. I mean, we can get into that if we want to.
Yeah,
But like,
yeah, I know that's more philosophical,
yeah,
but like,
it's more philosophical, right? But like for
but that is your
criminals,
philosophy.
that is my philosophy, right? But
Okay,
for criminals at the very least, like I think this is maybe a category of people who they're not innocent by definition, right? In terms of what they.
But they did repay their debt to society.
They did, and the employer should be able to take that into consideration, right? So I think a good idea would be like, you divulge what whatever your history is to your employer if they're going to hire you and they ask those questions, and then you also include like an essay about how like you've reflected and you've been rehabilitated and how like you're better now. And I think a lot of employers.
yeah, nothing enough to deter criminals itself.
Well, I think a lot of
Right,
employers are gonna take that into consideration, but maybe not all are. But I'm sorry again. I don't want to have to work with somebody who like committed a violent felony.
I mean, you said punch earlier. I mean, like assault's not even a felony. I mean, it's like, I mean, you don't want someone
It
like
can be.
would you work with somebody that got in a fist fight at a bar?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, I would. It depends on my industry. Okay. If I ran a daycare, no. If I ran maybe not a bar. If I ran like a mechanic shop, sure. Right. Like, who cares?
I don't know. I think that they should. I think like if you're saying for on the question of the box, yeah. I mean, I guess I think companies should do whatever they want. Like they should be able to ask, but like you should also be able to not answer that if you want. And then the company should also have the right to run a background check on you. And if they do or don't, that's on them. But like to say, hey, we didn't do our due diligence, and it was your job to sit here and tell us, hey, we needed to check this box. No, that's bullshit. I'm sorry that you're not gonna get your money back from me. Like, all right, you fooled me once, shame on you. Fooled me twice, shame again, or whatever it is George Bush says, kind of thing. So like I'm just saying, like, there needs to be some like responsibility put on the business in that regard. Yeah, They got fooled. That's on you. You should have done a background check. But I also don't think we should be making them do it. But the business can ask. It's kind of my take.
Because somebody still did labor.
Yeah, even if it wasn't good labor, as
But
long as they weren't
they
embezzling.
defrauded you though. Like they the whole.
Did they lose value though?
Yeah, but okay, so I put on there a box. So
They-
you defrauded me on a box, but it's my duty. It says, hey, I can background you check you. If I don't, that's on me, bro. I mean, like, that's the whole like point of safety checks. Like, felt like, hey, I require you wear helmets, and then I let my employees go out there not wearing helmets, and somebody gets stabbed in the head with a nail from a nail gun. Oh, guess what? I'm gonna get in trouble for that because we weren't enforcing that law, kind of thing.
Look at Lactoid not valuing labor, right?
Well, no.
Honest labor. They engage in honest labor.
Well, it's not honest. By
And
definition, it's not honest. They lied.
No, wait a minute. But no, so like that doesn't
Dishonest labor.
I'm sorry. Okay. So like, you hired me, right? You hired me to move rocks from point A to point B, right? And I was dishonest on the employment application, but the rocks are moved from point A to point B.
No.
Boss.
Whoa. I did not hire you to move rocks. Assuming I don't think you're a violent felon, but let's just say you were. I didn't hire you to move rocks from point A to point B. I hired the non-felon prime to move rocks from point A to point B. And during that entire time now, I have incurred a risk, right? I have incurred a risk of if you happen to go and commit a crime again, which you're much more likely to do if you're already like a violent felon, now I'm on the hook. And then I had to eat that risk without even knowing it. Like, no, there needs to be some kind of deterrence here.
But hold on, but there was no injury, right? You
Yeah, and a drunk driver who doesn't hit somebody, I guess there's no injury, so we just let them go.
But okay, fair enough on that part. But like but you've said specifically like that you don't even want to prosecute crimes that have a victim. And I'm not exactly sure how you were necessarily victimized in a situation when like the job was done and now you're asking for restitution for a job that was done.
No, I think I'm going to stick with like the drunk driving example, where I think that like there's different aspects of crime, or what should be crime is there is one where you directly hurt somebody, but then there's another where you substantially put somebody at risk of being hurt. Right? Let's say you're drunk as fuck and you're driving, swerving 95 miles per hour near a kindergarten. Yeah, like I'm throwing the book at you, even if you happen to not clip a fucking 5-year-old. Okay, it doesn't matter. If you're shooting at somebody and you're a terrible shot, you're holding the gun wrong, and like you miss all like fucking 14 bullets, I'm still arresting you. Like it doesn't. Well, no one was hurt. No, you were trying to kill them. Like you were trying to commit a crime. Like you were trying to hurt somebody. You committed fraud. And by the way, I think if your employer, by the way, like defrauds you as well, they should also get in trouble for fraud. Right? Contracts should be consensual both ways.
Yeah, I mean, like they would have injured me if they had actually defrauded me, though, right? Like employment defraudment would, like an example of that would be like saying that they could pay when they can't pay, right? I don't know, or something like that.
Yeah,
but that's an actual. But like, so I think there's
or another example could be real quick. Like let's say you're working a job site where like they promise you in your employment application that you're gonna have certain safety precautions, right? And they don't provide you those safety precautions when you show up to the job site and you do the work anyway. And you happen to not get your head ripped off. Okay, let's just say you're working like heavy machinery. Okay, but they never gave you the device that prevents your head from getting ripped off if it actually like came to that. I think you should be able to sue your employer because they lied on the contract. They promised you a level of safety that they did not deliver. Even if that risk wasn't realized, you still took that risk. Same thing when you're the employee defrauding the employer. I know you did the work, but like you didn't do the work according to the terms that you both agreed to.
I think that's where maybe we're different here. I don't think omission is lying. If I just choose not to answer that, I mean, hey, who's to know? It's your job as the employer to check that. I'm not defrauding you of anything. I just chose not to answer it. So I didn't lie to you and say, hey, I'm not a felon, or whatever. If I say I killed like 10 people and it somehow got out, and I go and apply for your construction job, and there's a box and I don't answer
Come
it.
on, Admiral Gibbs. Like,
this is some anti-list views.
Yeah, like if you're going to like say like, hey, like part of this contract is that I'm going to reward you with a car, right? But you fail to mention that the car was like previously burned to a crisp, right? Like that might be
I'm just saying if the car's running, I guess they lived up to their end of the deal. It's your job.
They never said running car. They
never
just said
running.
Yeah,
it's
your job to do due diligence. Due diligence is a thing. Like, I mean, it's funny, but it's a thing.
This specifically has been the topic of many a lawsuit of There was one lawsuit where Pepsi actually won because they promised a Harrier jet to some guy.
Yeah.
They should have had to hand over the Harrier jet, by the way. That was
remember
bullshit. The fact
Yeah,
that
I
guys didn't
remember
get the
that.
Harrier jet. And the
Yeah.
other one was like they promised like it was like a new car or some kind of like, but like the brand name of the car was like a play on words. And so like they actually like a
The
Toyota
Toyota thing.
the
Yeah,
Toyota,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. They promised a new Toyota, and they showed up with like a toy Yoda from Star Wars, right?
Yeah, those are like
Got him.
And the guy was like, "Fuck that! I'm suing you," and he won. They had to buy him a Toyota.
those are like two standard classes you take in like when you go to law school. You have to do. I don't know, is it tort law? I don't know which one it was that covered those, but contracts. It was contracts.
Classic.
Contract.
But hold on. So I guess, and I'm a non-lawyer, and if I was a lawyer, I'm sure I could argue this better, but I can't, right? So I'm at the mercy of my friend Lactoid. But like to say that I hear you on the drunk driving thing, but like that during the drunk driving, you were actively taking an action that's putting people at risk, right? You're driving a car in a dangerous manner while intoxicated. That's that. But like comparing that to a person who is doing the job, like and has completed that job and wasn't like preparing to, I don't know, like hit you over the head with one of those rocks. Like I don't see how those risks are the same. I hear you when you say there is a risk, right? I don't deny that. But to say that these risks are the same, like I guess an active risk, like it's like kinetic energy versus potential energy, right? Like within the the drunk driver situation, that's something kinetic, right? It's something that's actively happening. There's a potential risk here, like potential energy when it's like stored up, right? Like it can happen, but it hasn't happened.
Well, so in terms of risk, I don't even accept that because the potential risk of a drunk driver is hitting somebody. They're not actually hurting anybody until they do so. And a lot of drunk drivers manage to make it home, right? Most accidents are caused by sober drivers. Statistically, now obviously this is because it's more sober drivers. Most people who drive drunk, I would assume, in any given instance, are probably not going to kill somebody. But they pose a much higher risk to, just like felons or violent felons.
Yeah, but they're taking a kinetic action.
Well, no, but so the action in one case is you're posing a risk to other people against their consent by driving drunk. In this case, like as a violent felon, you have a higher risk of reoffending. So you are imposing a risk against the consent of the employer because you lied on your resume. And the other element of the fraud here is not just in terms of risk, because like there's also an element of, again, like dishonesty in of itself. If I sold you a watch Prime that functioned just like a Rolex did, but it wasn't a Rolex, it cost $18 to make in China, and it looked like almost identical and it functioned identical, but it wasn't a Rolex, would you feel a little bit scammed, or would you be like, I guess it's technically the same thing, right? It tells time. That's what I hired it to do.
Feel free to send me a fake Rolex. I'll take it.
I feel like this is because what you're buying isn't just the functionality of it. When you're buying a Rolex, you're buying part of the brand, part of the flex of it.
Well,
right?
I think Lactroid would say Prime is the brand, and therefore it's like false representation of like.
Yeah, your employees are your brand. Right? Like, hold on, your employees are absolutely your brand, right? If I'm
for most things, no. For like a construction job, no. Nobody's seen the employees. They're going to use the building and never see an employee who built it.
So,
but
if you're like front facing, maybe.
Definitely front facing. But
yeah.
even for construction, I can see like, I don't know. Maybe I just, with my line of work, I talk to a lot more construction guys than most people.
No, I hear you like to it. Like you are part of the brand, which is why like employers fire workers who like get involved in some sort of media spectacle. You know, like that disgusting woman in Central Park dog walker. She got fired because of her racist bullshit, and
let's not go down that road again.
I mean, we don't have to go down that road. There's no reason to go down that road again because I'm absolutely right. So, right. So
I don't disagree.
We're driving past it. I have. Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. But anyway,
I think we should really get the issue. Personally,
you should. I think. Like I would do that every fucking stream. I don't give a fuck. Anyway, but in any case, yeah. So like I hear that's a part of the brand, and so like if they were a part of my construction company and they did this thing, then like fuck that guy, like you're fired. So I'll have to think about that. I think you're posing a really good question on the Rolex. It's actually really really good one. I don't have a proper answer to that.
Be
I'm
honest
just
with your
curious.
resume, friends.
Yeah, lactoid. So is what you're saying like you want to apply this to like the criminals or like police criminal or like this is like general population as well? As in like, so some people put on the resumes like hobbies of like I enjoy reading, and turns out they don't enjoy reading. It's pretty clear they don't read anything and not informed on anything at all. So like this,
Yeah.
I enjoy punching
It's like
people
thi-
instead.
so like if this person gets hired, like is that also an excuse for like now all the money that they've earned, it's got
All
to
of
be
it.
returned?
All
No,
of it.
so now hold on. So with like subjective interests, like there's like two things here. I like reading is so fucking broad that as long as you've read a word in your life and you've enjoyed it, I like reading. Okay, I can't argue against that, right? That's not an objective determination.
Yeah, but I can narrow it
But I
down
do
of like
think,
I like
right.
reading sci-fi novels or
Sure.
something.
Yeah. If you put on your resume that you love reading sci-fi novels, and then later you are dumb enough to admit I've never touched a sci-fi novel in my life. Yeah, sure. You deserve to lose your money, okay? If you're that fucking stupid. That you
Okay,
actually
like
said
I can maybe get on board in terms of like I'm not in favor of deception, and I can understand someone losing their job of misrepresenting. But like, yeah, now all their wage, like let's
Yeah,
just say
I
this.
think that's my problem. Is a punishment doesn't match like the harm, right? Like, so yeah, sure. Like, I might have lied on my resume about like my deep
You
criminal
enjoy
history
working
here.
out. You turns out you clearly don't.
that.
And
Ouch.
I come. No,
Oh
not you,
wow.
Prime, but like I've seen that on a resume.
But anyway, like yeah, so like I lied about my criminal history. But then you lactoid, you while reputationally you suffered a risk, right? You're taking on that risk, but the harm that you actually suffered was minimal. And so, like, yeah, sure, fire me, right? No more rocks moved. But to say that like I forfeit all the labor, that seems too much.
Would you be okay? Hold on.
And in fact, that would be like on Corey's point. I think would be an incentive for employers to like look for any inaccuracy at all within a political contract, and
Yeah,
then they get
true.
all the wages ever.
So
from-
how about we just do it like this, where it's like we'll make it like a nuanced sliding scale of like if you lie about your sci-fi books, the employer gets like whatever value we place on like the risk that they inadvertently took, which for the sci-fi would be like nothing, right? But if they lie about having certain credentials, very well could be, right? Or if they lie about having criminal history, very well could be, and then we could start putting like a value on that the employer can claw back.
Yeah, that I can be. I'm not saying I'm fully in favor, but I'm more sympathetic to that in terms of like, yeah, if someone's saying they're proficient in French in Quebec and they're clearly not, then like, yeah, I see that
and
as
you're a French
problematic.
translator, and somehow you hire them any which way, which would be amazing on your part.
This
Hey,
has
we've
has
seen
happened.
fake translators, with the sign.
With sign language, yeah, they literally
Yeah.
will hire somebody who claims to be a sign language, and they'll just fucking make it up on the spot.
That was the classic example being at the funeral for what's this not it's Nelson Mandela. You remember, guys? You guys remember that one? Yeah. In case you don't remember, it's amazing. Go watch it online. Where you have President Obama and like the Mandela family. I think some other dignitaries. Was Bill Clinton there? I forget. This
Yeah, it's
dude is
wild.
sliding, and he is sliding hard. He's sliding like you don't think about like signing like having like an effort putting into it, but like there was an effort there. He was signing hard, and it was complete gibberish. Hilarious. And people were upset because like, well, how do we let like this fraud? This like dude was like mentally ill. Like get that close to the U.S. president at the time.
Good questions. So like, yeah, I'm more sympathetic to like, yeah, this person's wages maybe at some point should like be recovered. To what extent, I don't know, but yeah, it's tricky.
All right. All right. See you. If you're even in the no, you're not in car. But Joe Lewis, I hear you. Joe Lewis had to drop out. Spotty internet connection. I understand, friend. Hopefully we'll have him next week. Yeah. Okay. So we can move on to our next topic. I thought this was interesting, because it's like a nuance, discussion. Even though we know nuance isn't allowed here. It's
Or politics.
or politics. But like I like introducing these complexities because again, like I'm not a person who's like has a problem like being punitive against people, especially who do horrible things, right? But I want to design a system that works for the most people. And how do you do that while taking into account that there are violent individuals? I think the only way to do it, honestly, is to like rehaul our system up and down because our system isn't rehabilitative. It doesn't produce better outcomes oftentimes. So like other than just like separating people from the population, which can be useful, but obviously we need more than that. So that's my okay. If you have enjoyed this so far, Harrell, great, love to see it. Hit that follow button if you're out there. Hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube, and consider supporting the channel. Sub to the channel, gift bits or gift subs. All that is a huge help. This is how I power this community. This is what allows me to come back week after week. So consider helping us out, guys. We do need your assistance. Use your Amazon Prime Gaming. That's a free sub. So throw that out to us. It goes a long way. Or get bits. Or use a hype train or a super chat. Or sorry, a hype chat or a super chat. Because then we will answer your questions, right? I don't answer questions. It's not like in a hype chat or a super chat. So if you want to interject here or ask someone else a question or anything like that, we will read it. But yeah, put it in a hype chat or a super chat. Thanks so much. Okay. Let's go on to our next topic. Topic 2. A bomb was detonated in Ankara. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Ankara, the capital city of Turkey. Those responsible are probably Kurdish separatists that have been fighting for an independent state. They are fighting an asymmetric warfare against a stronger opponent, as many radical movements have. For instance, Black South Africans resorted to terror attacks when fighting against apartheid. Whether you are familiar with these conflicts or not, is it ever morally permissible to target civilians? Can any side take the moral high ground in war where civilians will be killed by both sides? If you were fighting against tyranny, would you never stoop to such tactics? So yeah, bombing off. Luckily, like it was, I think only 2 people were injured. I'm not sure how seriously injured they were, but it wasn't like a mass casualty incident. So thank goodness for that. Um, but these are tactics that are used when you have very little power. Um, uh, like when you can't effectively hurt the enemy, being the state that you're against. Uh, something a tactic is to uh, grind down the people, making the cost of the war so high that the state has to come to the negotiating table. So targeting the civilians, that's a thing that different groups have done. And some of those groups, I think people here would agree with, like in terms of their overall cause. Uh, but are these tactics ever acceptable? So we'll start with our friend Lactoid.
Yeah, no, this is one of the toughest questions for me. There's a couple topics that I like. A lot of topics I feel like very strongly on, but like there's a couple ones where there's like a lot of conflicting um, considerations, and this is one of them. I guess what I'll say is that generally speaking, for me, the standard whenever there's any kind of aggression towards like civilians, the level of justification you need is like increased exponentially. And I'm not saying it's impossible to hit that threshold. Like for example, the United States hit that threshold when it nuked Japan. But I can think of a lot of examples where it has not hit that threshold. Do I think it hit the threshold for bombing Ankara, and do I think that that's going to actually do anything? No, I don't. I don't think it's effective. I don't think it's just, and because it's not effective, it clearly hasn't met any threshold, other than just simply radicalizing Turkey even more. So no, I think it's not justified.
Thank you so much, Pep.
Yeah, I kind of have a similar view. I can imagine circumstances. My initial reaction is no, but then if I think about it, I can imagine circumstances where you'd feel you had no other option, but you've exhausted all your other options. And if you're like a person that has kids and you're like, their lives are at risk or they're negatively impacted in like a horrible way that you desperately want to try and account for, and you've really tried everything else, like I can conceive of circumstances when that would feel like the only viable option. I don't think it's great, but I can think of times where it would either be or at least feel necessary, if nothing else was accomplishing anything, which I don't love. So, and I kind of agree with Lactate on the justification for it would have to be really, really high, and especially if it's not effective, then it's just like, this is just fucked up. But if there was yeah, I don't know. It just seems really icky to think about. It's not a fun question at all.
Let's go to our friend Corey.
Yeah, so just like some people have really strong positions when it comes to lists, I have a pretty strong position right now when it comes to this, where, yeah, I haven't thought of every single scenario in existence, but so far I can't really come up with anything where it's justified using the specific language of like targeting civilians. Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. As of right now, I'm open for my mind being changed, but I can't think of a scenario just yet where targeting civilians is ever morally justified.
Gibbs.
All right, so begin two things. I had a lot of friends that are Kurds that served as translators for the U.S. Army, and the way we treated them and the way they didn't get their own autonomous state is ridiculous. And I just want to state that going anyway. So now going on to my main point, I'm gonna quote from a Union hero from the Civil War, and I'm gonna say this is what he says. He says, "War is hell. You cannot qualify war in harsher terms than I will. War is cruelty, and you cannot refine it. Those who brought war into our country deserve all the curses and maledictions that people can pour out." That's from General William Tecumseh Sherman. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but part of the reason the South surrendered and there was no guerrilla war is because what he did to Georgia and the surrounding areas was what he called total war, which is wipe out everything in his path, which was harmful to civilians. He killed them. He broke the back of the Confederacy. And so the part of the thing is yes. So in some aspects, war on civilians, damaging civilians, is absolutely justified. In many cases, and I have to sit here and stand by that. And for us to sit here and go, "Oh no, poo poo," people have to use whatever tools are available to them in order to beat what they perceive as tyranny.
Thank you so much, and for taking a strong stance. Tiberius is here. Thanks for being here, Tiberius. We're just doing introductions on the second topic, so.
Yeah, you all can hear me correctly, right?
Mhm.
Fantastic. It's great to see everybody here. I'll spare my own personal intro and just get into the topic. I largely am with Gibbs on this one. I think there's a lot of situations to where I can look into the wider world, and if I'm putting myself in certain people's shoes, I'm probably one of those radicals that's, trying to take the fight against tyranny. Now, unfortunately, one man's freedom fighter is another man's insurrectionist. But the reality here is simple. There are instances and interactions where peoples do not get along, where they will fight, where they will shed blood on each other. Now, people will argue that's immoral, but I think that's the point where you've abandoned morality. You're saying that whatever my future is, it's unacceptable, and I'm willing to take whatever precautions necessary to succeed it. Obviously, there's a lot of gray in that nebulous part, but I'll simply suffice it as this. If I'm Israeli or Palestinian and I'm looking at what is going on there, I have a hard time putting myself in either of those people's shoes and not being hyper radicalized. I really do. Um, it's not a particularly great situation that they're in, and everyone has a lot of bad blood. And I cannot say that I would not be one of the most radical people in that conversation on either side that I was on it. So yeah, I'm sure I'm going to make this one pretty spicy, but I really wanted to join this topic, and thank you for letting me do so.
Okay. All right. Open to the panel.
Just to maybe clarify and understand your position better, Lactoid, which I think is probably seems to be in alignment with other people here. So yeah, you seem to be at least, you open the door of like there might be some very niche circumstances where it meets that very high threshold for you that targeting civilians is permissible. So does that also include your own troops in that?
Like U.S. soldiers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea, and we did, right? And like in Japan, like I think that the two things I'm considering whenever like we have to do this is one, is the goal good enough? Like, is what our actual goal here is good enough? And ending Imperial Japan and like ending Nazi Germany, bombing of Dresden, right? That is good enough. Ending those countries and arguably ending the Confederacy as well, right? Like, okay, good goal. Second, is the action conducive enough to the goal, right? Does it actually get us closer to the goal? Well, for Japan, yes. For Germany, yes. And Gibbs just talked about how for the Confederacy, Sherman's tactics did absolutely have an effect. Does this bombing, like, even though I might agree with number one that like the goal of freedom from Turkey, who's one of the worst, probably the worst actor in NATO, freedom from Turkey, is that like a good thing? Yeah, arguably. But did a random like bombing of like in a Turkish town, which by the way, recently I just looked it up, was retaliated against with airstrikes in Iraq. So I mean, Turkey's launching airstrikes now over this, which is again like all you've done is just radicalize Turkey further. So you're not accomplishing your goal at all. What have they done besides get themselves bombed?
Wait a minute, hold on. Like, that's a weird standard. First of all, like, just putting it out there, I'm not trying to make this a conversation about that, but like, I disagree that bombing Japan with the nukes effectively moved us closer to the goal of ending the war.
I agree with your
But
position there.
yeah, so we'll leave it there, right? But like, to like when you're in a long conflict, right? This is like a decades long struggle by the Kurds, I believe, to get independence, right? Not just from Turkey, but like other places. But to get their own land. To say that, well, okay, this one action that you took in furtherance of that cause didn't immediately make them surrender or get them to the negotiating table. So then, then it's a problem, right? Like it's the culmination of it. That's war in general. Like, it's the culmination of these actions that eventually get the surrender or bring them to the negotiation table, right?
Yeah, but it needs to be calculated accumulation, right? So in this case, like what's the accumulation? Like what is the goal? What's the end game? It would be like do you think it actually helped Al Qaeda to do 9/11? Based on America's response?
It absolutely did. That's
Yeah, they're
100% what they
recruiting.
wanted.
You
It's
think
100.
so? You think
Fluid.
Yeah,
so?
Osama bin Laden wanted to
In the
draw us into
short
the
term,
war.
in the
That's
short
literally
term,
the whole point. 100% what happened there was what they wanted. I mean, not like dying themselves maybe afterwards. I don't know. But like that's what they wanted. That was the point, to drain America of its resources. Mission accomplished.
I only agree with that in half. I apologize. I want to interrupt just in this one because did we play into Osama bin Laden's hands? Actually, yes. We got goaded into basically ramming smack dab in the Middle East. What they wanted to do, and thank Christ he was a religious zealot who was wrong in this idea, but he wanted to basically have the Americans become public enemy number one throughout the Middle East, and they were going to reestablish the caliphate because they would be able to unify around that. So, like, did we drain all of our resources in the Middle East? Obviously not. We still have incredible amounts of wealth. But did we folly? Did we fuck up? Of course. It's one of the reasons why I never served. I recognized that the plan was dog shit from the gate. But that being said, it's 2010. What I want to have a bit of an issue here with what where Lactoid was going. I don't want to compare this to the Axis. Like, you're still talking about like state-on-state violence. And while there's some analogs there we can draw, like, let's be real here. The Turks are not the most friendly people to anyone throughout the region. We can talk about the Kurds, who maybe have a state with North Iraq at best, right? But reality here is like they've had bad relations with the Armenians, which are now in a conflict with the Azerbaijani. We can get into Kosovo. We can get into a lot of these places to where people have had to basically try to take up the fight. And 9 times out of 10, it's not that them alone wins; it's that somebody comes in and backs them. That's how you largely get independence. United States, hey, we have France to thank for that, right? There's a lot of times where if you are basically an insurrectionist movement, alone you will not succeed. But do I understand the cause of what you're going for? Holy crap, Uyghurs in China? Yeah, I can probably understand that, right? Can I understand half the people throughout Iran not liking the Persians? Yeah, I can probably do that too. There's a lot of examples, particularly Africa is probably the worst, just as a whole, where I can simply just say, I can put myself in a lot of people's shoes and see why there's a bloodbath waiting to start. So repeating my intro, I apologize for that, but I think we need to get more in the weeds of these more specific things where we're talking about a group of people who don't have a state to back them going up against a state. And I think that's really where where kind of the rubber hits the road here, because you have to make some really nasty choices.
I do think there needs to be a game plan, right? Otherwise, you're not. Otherwise, the only thing you're accomplishing, especially in this case,
Is murder.
Is just murder, and
Right.
and arguably, again, like putting yourself in more hot water, right? Turkey responded by firing, like dropping bombs, and Israel is another great example, right? What does Hamas firing rockets on Israel actually accomplish? It gives Israel a pretext to bomb them, right? Because now they're bombing the rocket sites, which they are, and it's hard to argue against that because they're shooting the rocket sites. So if you didn't shoot rockets at Israel, there goes like almost all their justification for using force against you.
I find it's interesting for a person who's so dedicated to the right to self-defense that like these people trying to have an armed response to their oppression, they're saying, well, what did you accomplish by using your arms?
Well, to be fair though, like self-defense in this case would be applying to like people attacking you. We're specifically talking about
the Israelis.
But they do feel they're good,
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like we're literally having a
all the
self-defense
time.
versus self-defense conversation, right?
Yeah. So
I actually hold on. Let me jump in here if you don't mind.
Sure, man.
I think that I actually might slightly disagree with what Tyrese is saying about this not including state-on-state actors. But even in the sense where we're sitting here talking about this, right? And these are people are fighting an asymmetrical warfare. You're saying, oh, it just amounted to murder. No, it didn't just amount to murder. Let's use Lebanon. Let's use Hamas, right? So what are they doing by that? By attacking Israel, they're showing their dedication to the cause. So then they get support from Iran. They get support from Hezbollah, which is basically Iran. They're gaining support. They're gaining publicity. They're showing that they're leading the fight. It's not just it's a murder. You might not see this as like they're winning, but they live like a decentralized style of fighting, and they have a decentralized style of government for the most part. So when you're sitting here and they're attacking these rocket sites, they're honestly using their own civilians as shields too, and that increases the outrage, which further accomplishes their goals. So yeah, I think that civilians, as bad as it sounds, are absolutely a necessary tool of war in some sense. Like it's not and it gains these state backing people. Like Hamas wouldn't be a problem if they didn't have the funding from Iran. But since they are fighting asymmetrical warfare and they're showing they're willing to go up to bat, they do get state funding for their actions.
But
I think there's
helping them though,
Go
right?
ahead.
Like
I mean,
Israel is like just definitively winning, and every single
Yeah,
time every time we see these rocket attacks, we see more settlements.
well, yeah, and they build settlements, right? And they keep doing, and they're going to keep doing that anyway. So it's like, what are you going to do in that situation? You got to defend yourself. I mean, like, well,
Hold on,
I don't see
I just
firing
need to
rockets
push
Tel
back
Aviv
on
to be defense.
hold on. Lactoid. You made like an incorrect correlation here. That like, oh, when you did these rocket attacks, then we see more settlements. The settlements are happening regardless, right? Whether the Palestinians roll over or whether they fight back. The settlements are happening regardless. The attacks are I don't know like what like the game plan are with the attacks.
what if I blow up a munitions? What if I can blow up a
But
Lockheed
hold on. But just the point is that like it's incorrect to link those two things. That like, oh well, if you had been nicer to the Israelis, maybe they wouldn't have put that other settlement. No, the Israelis are engaged. The government, the Israeli government, is engaged in an ethnic cleansing campaign. That's what they're facing. Straight up ethnic cleansing.
I'm going to absolutely make the argument because again, we got a couple like moving parts here. Israel 100% is justified in both internationally and domestically. The kind of parties that are pushing for settlements see popularity gains when rockets hit Tel Aviv, right? Internationally, like U.S. promises more support for the Iron Dome and other forms of like weaponry when rockets hit Tel Aviv. Like, is it true there might be some settlements without these events? Surely, I'm not denying that it's possible. But what I'm saying is that, like, in every way that Israel uses to justify these settlements and justify other actions that they do, like the fact that they're constantly under a rocket attack.
This is so weird, right? the only point that you're making here is that Israel has like the PR apparatus to spin like their ethnic cleansing campaign and to, oh no, some of our civilians were hurt, right? And for no reason, just for the Palestinians are big old meanies, right? And I guess because they're big old meanies, I guess we got to build more of these settlements, right? Like that's not how this works. They're engaging in an ethnic cleansing campaign, right? They're trying to move all these people out, right, or kill them, or whatever, like depending on like where on the right political spectrum you are in Israel. You are trying to get these people out of this land, ethnically cleanse them, and in that to advance that, you are committing violence, right, up and down, either direct violence or violence against their property, which is something you usually care about when they're like literally knocking over their houses. And then as a response, right, because this is an asymmetrical warfare, and yes, most of the things you do in asymmetrical warfare isn't going to be effective, especially at first. There is a response. There's a response by rockets, right? And you're saying like, well, I've got a problem. Your focus is the rockets landing rather than all the violence, right? The massive amount of violence used against the Israelis, which is, or sorry, the Palestinians, which is fascinating to me watching this.
Which here,
I don't know if I
Wait,
agree
wait,
with
let-
all
I'm
that
gonna-
with the Israel stuff, but
I'm gonna-
like,
Hold on,
very, very, very quickly, very quickly. Would you let's say a new settlement pops up next to like a bunch of Palestinians, and
not next to, they'll knock over their houses.
yeah, they knocked over the houses and they set up a settlement. And then the Palestinians get together, they link up with some Hamas operatives, and they break in with like a pickup truck or something into the compound, line up all the children, and just shoot them in the back of the head. Is this justified?
I wouldn't do that against the children. I would say like the children certainly not, but like if they attacked the Israeli settlers, right? Settlers who, and let's understand, because the settlers are the ones who are usually armed. The settlers go to Palestinian towns and they attack, they kill, harass, they rape.
No. These ones are unarmed. These ones are unarmed.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying the state of play here. And understanding that that's what happens, right? But if they retaliated in this asymmetrical warfare against their civilians, that would make perfect sense to me. Like that would be if we were talking about a cause that is worthwhile, right? Palestinian independence, yes. Getting themselves under Israeli occupation, yes, right. Stopping the ethnic cleansing happening against them, yes. Then if that seemed like a valid tactic. Now, would I want that to happen? Would I want them to be killed? Absolutely not. I don't want them to do that at all. But like within the context of warfare, would that make sense to kill the adults that have made the active choice to move into that settlement? Like even like that in itself being a violence, right? Perpetuating the machine. Yeah, how would they not be valid targets?
Yeah, they just moved in, right? And so then the Hamas breaks in and they gather all of them up. They put them in the middle of the square, bind them up like and hog tie them, and they're all like laying in a row. Are you not? Are you the thing is justified to just basically walk down the line, just shooting them all in the back of the head, killing all the civilians?
It's probably a war crime. But like I'm saying that like I mean it is a war crime, I'm sure. Because they're not like fighting
They're not
back at that point.
combatants.
They're not combatants at that point. Yeah, but what we're talking about? We're talking about civilians. Hold on.
You're right.
Yeah, hold on. But like this is the point of the conversation. So the reason why I'm worked up is because you gave an allowance, right? It'd be one thing if you started this conversation and you said absolutely not. Under no circumstances is this allowed. Okay, right? So working with your position, you're saying whether we have an acceptable reason and whether it's effective, right? Would it be acceptable? Sorry, did it have an acceptable reason? I think so. Or in terms of fighting for freedom and not being ethnically cleansed. Would it be effective to like discourage people from settling within those lands? Yeah, I think so. Like if you had the if it was the case that Palestinians had the ability to fight back and you had a good chance of dying, yeah, it would actually discourage people from coming through. So like I think this meets your requirements, but you're acting like this is a ridiculous statement.
It doesn't meet my requirements, right? Because both scenarios are functionally the same, right? In one instance, you break into a settlement, you line up all the civilians, you shoot them in the back of the head. The other situation, you fire rockets intentionally at civilian areas that are going to blow up children, right? Which we've seen. They're going to blow up adults, which we've seen, right? And they're going to blow up innocent non-combatants. So in both scenarios, you're using violence specifically to target non-combatants. And then the second question is this needed? Like, or is this actually efficient? Or are there like more efficient alternatives? Well, we know that shooting rockets at Tel Aviv doesn't accomplish anything. And no, I don't think that basically gathering up a bunch of civilians in a settlement and shooting them in the back of the head, I don't think this accomplishes anything. In fact, I think not only would it galvanize Israel to go further, there's also alternatives, right? You could like, push them away somewhere else. You could
Push them
do
away
other
somewhere
things.
else.
Yes.
No. So like that's why. And then the next thing I'm going to ask you, because you're saying, well, none of these things are effective, right? Well, what is effective that you can do within an asymmetrical warfare, right? So you're saying that at some point, like you can attack civilians. You said yes, that is the thing that can happen. All right, okay. So going through using your logic here, what is an effective thing for a disempowered group to do?
Yeah, I think there needs to be like a game plan. There needs to be like
Don't give me a game
valid.
plan.
No, no, no.
Everyone says have. Give me
Well,
something better than a game plan.
Well, that's kind of what I have in mind. Like there needs to be like a viable strategy for victory. There needs to be like a specific goal in place, and they need to think about like, okay, if we do this asymmetrical warfare, like this is why we must do this, otherwise we're gonna fucking lose, right? Like
So
even though I agree with what,
let me-
sorry,
So
I'm
hold on a
just-
second. One second.
Go ahead.
Al Qaeda, right? If they publish their goals, right, that our goal is to draw in the U.S. into a war. That's our game plan, right? The necessary game plan. Put it out to the world for our friend Lactoid, and then they attack the building, right? The World Trade Center, and they succeed, and then the game plan succeeds, right? Then you're like, okay, well then 9/11 was acceptable, right?
So
Because they had the game plan and it was effective.
Well, assuming in this case, like obviously, and this is the case with state actors and non-state actors, they obviously have to have a goal that was the first part of my requirements, like a good enough goal, which would mean a goal that agrees with my ideology, which Al Qaeda doesn't. But let's assume, for the argument's sake, that they did. If they had an ideology that fully agreed with me, and like part of like any kind of attack was 100% like in line with furthering a particular agenda that was likely to succeed. Like I would have to see the specifics, but I could see the argument for it.
Can I slap Lactoid for a second? Because even though I
Yeah.
agree with him, like just the frame of reference is killing me.
Prime
all right,
agreed to shooting civilians in the back of the head, so I'm not the fucking.
Look. I get where you're going. Like let me parse this out because like I disagree with both of you on like different levels here. But you know, Prime's boss, so we have to play our cards right here, right? Otherwise, he's Israel, and I don't want to be Palestine. Okay, so let's get into the first part here, Lactoid. I think you do take this from a little bit too much of a logical perspective. I think logic actually has to come second here. I don't disagree with any point that you've laid, but we were talking about. I know we're going down like the whole like Israel Palestine because I brought it up, so let's do it. We're talking about two peoples that largely look at themselves as victims, right? Who largely see themselves as being attacked, being aggressed, what have you. All right. So when you take that logical step of, all right, what's the game plan? What are the logical options? And then what can we just eliminate out of the gate? Palestine probably, theoretically can have a peace with honor. But if you're the victim, are you going to accept that? Are you going to accept peace with the oppressor, the people who bomb you, the people who run you off your home? Probably not, right? Like the problem that I keep having with this conversation, every time I put it in my inner monologue and my inner calculator, is Palestine is simply in a position to where they are either fighting a like protracted retreat to where they know they're going to lose their homes over the next 50 years, to where they are not going to be a people anymore if something doesn't drastically change. And the only point of fighting is to continue waiting for something to change geopolitically. Or two, they have to accept total and outright surrender. And they become either migrants or vagrants or basically prisoners in their own homeland. Did you disagree with that analysis?
I don't know what the future would look like absent Hamas rocket attacks. conflicts. I don't know if Israel would have the geopolitical justification to like move into the Gaza Strip completely.
Okay, well, my issue is that like Israel on the other side of this calculation simply just needs to continue what they're doing, and they are going to win in time, right? So like the difference here is either Palestine or the Palestinians need to outright surrender, or they have to they are going to continue fighting until something changes. Well, if I'm in their position, I'm probably going to continue fighting because I probably would not trust the Israelis. Putting myself in their shoes, right? That's a whole other conversation because I don't see a peace with honor here. I really don't. Palestinians getting citizenship within Israel, that's really what it would take. Are the Israelis willing to do that? Are the Palestinians willing to do that? I'm going to probably just say that's off the table unless somebody can convince me otherwise. So what do? I hesitate to even say where I would be on this position because not only do I like, does my morality feel like it personally dies within me? I feel like I'd violate TOS just doing it too. So I don't want to like go into the sun here, but there's a level to where like chat, anyone on this panel, tell me, what do you do when you are looking at two groups of people who probably want each other dead?
Well, I think this is
Go ahead.
this is the problem though. Like I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about like these two peoples that see themselves as victims and see this other group as like the aggressor, right? And I think this is the general problem whenever you kind of establish victimhood status for a group and you establish like oppressorhood status for a different group, because this like justifies any and all atrocities and has justified all atrocities like in history, right? You look back at every fucking atrocity and it's like, the Serbs claiming that they're victims of, the international order, so they got to go kill some Bosnians. The Bosnians claiming that they're victims of XYZ, so they got to do this and like attack certain civilians. Every horrific thing you can think of, it's like, yes, we are the victim group and they are the oppressor group, so we have to like respond in kind, or we have to defend ourselves collectively. But collective self-defense is like a tricky situation because yes, you can defend yourself against aggressors. And yes, if there's a big group of aggressors attacking you, you can defend yourself against them, and you can even defend yourself and your friends against aggressors. But the moment that defending yourself starts becoming, well, not only am I going to defend myself against this person who's attacking me, this person who's attacking me is part of this group, right? In my mind, I've placed them in this part of this group that includes that guy down the street who hasn't done shit.
Right.
Now I can justify blowing that guy up, right? This is why I'm saying, like, attacking civilians is like on prima facie, it's like face value, it is not justified. You have to like go through a lot of fucking shit to justify it.
I vehemently disagree. I like disagree very like highly. Like I gotta jump. I'm sorry if you don't mind, Pride.
Please.
So here's the deal. Like, first of all, I kind of, you brought the states like versus states actors. Like, nobody complains about us going in there and carpet bombing Germany during World War II. Why do they not? Because it's a battle. People complain about the Holocaust because obviously it was a systemic like eradication of people. So those are different things, right? So we're sitting here looking at two groups. You have to look at the means of these people, right? Soft targets are a viable target. They can target the soft targets. They can convince a civilian population that attrition is not worth having this war with these people. If I go blow up 500 restaurants and these people say, oh my God, these people are going to keep killing all of our civilians, maybe we should stop attacking these people. That's a viable way to win. It doesn't even have to have a plan. You can have individual lone wolves do it, and you can be much more effective as opposed to attacking highly trained Israeli soldiers or highly trained U.S. soldiers that you almost have no likelihood of being able to kill. Like, it sounds bad, but like, yeah, you used a scenario which is, I think, is an unfair scenario of, oh, we're gonna line the kids up and shoot them. The people that do that are generally the people with the means to do so. The much more like I don't know, after ISIS took over, they had the means. They're a pseudo state. The same thing as with like the Nazis when they took over. Then they lined people up. It's not like there's these groups that did it after. As most of the time when we're looking at killing civilians, we're looking at things like the Tokyo firebombing, the nukes, or we're looking at like suicide bombings, which are asymmetrical attacks against soft targets that are targets that are capable of attacking. Like, I can build a bomb in my backyard. I can't build a an M1 Abrams in my backyard.
I think there should be a distinction made between, well, so this might be like philosophical, like what is targeting, but I think there's a difference between like targeting and like collateral damage. I just want to put that on the table.
Yes.
Yeah. True. I think so. But
yeah, so that's why the bombing in Germany, I don't think really holds. Like, again, there's a line between where targeting begins and ends. That's hard to define, but like I think that's more on the collateral damage aspect.
Let me go ahead.
My problem with what Lactwood is saying is that, like, look, if you want to simply set the standard that you should never target civilians, then okay, then let's do that, right? but like we've given you multiple examples to work with here, of like people fighting in asymmetrical warfare, taking the choice to target civilians. And like again, I don't want to target civilians like that. I don't want to do something like that. But like I'm not in an asymmetrical warfare situation. But we've given you those examples, and we're trying to like give you an acceptable situation. And what we're finding out is that like what you presented was kind of bullshit, right? Like the standard you're setting that apparently no one can meet, right? I'm still looking for you to give me an example, people meeting this standard, like saying it's an acceptable uh, uh, cause and effective, right? But in asymmetrical warfare, so not like World War II, which Americans love to like to mine for pride. Like,
I mean, what if you
find
blow up
me that,
a
and
It's us fighting the British. Like that is literally the closest analogy we have as our own people. Because
or fight
we
Mexico?
hold on. So back to it. I need to understand this. Are you saying that it's just a Revolutionary War? That makes sense to you? Like when it's Americans doing the slaughter to I guess British civilians, but like I'm not sure how many British civilians were here necessarily. Like when that happens,
I think the Revolutionary War is a good example. I mean, I could probably like I agree. My threshold is very high because it needs to again be like independently like it's never independently justified. So like in order to justify it, you have to again like demonstrate like a clear goal and demonstrate why this is actually like important to reaching that goal. I can think of in the Revolutionary War. I could probably think of like um, the
so when
collapse of
Americans are doing it, it's okay.
Russia. The collapse of Russia. I think there's probably some examples there. Um, to some extent, maybe
Against
perhaps like the French Revolution to some extent, right? Like
so,
there's examples that I can think of historically. But if your goal is like if you believe, okay, I'm under like that group, like collectively is attacked. Like by the way, group responsibility is like a big no-no according to like the UN. But like that is kind of like a war crime, right? Just saying like XYZ group, the Hutus are responsible for this, right? Because we all know where that leads. You got a whole bunch of innocent Hutus being killed, right? And back and forth with the Tutsis and all that shit. Because that's the kind of shit that this justifies, right? So if it's never like,
then
okay,
just
they
say
are attacking me, so we got to attack those civilians.
just say that it's not allowed. Then that's fine.
But
That's all.
but I can think of scenarios in which, for the purposes of like in a very like strictly utilitarian calculus, for needing to win the war, let's say you have to do this. Like you have to assassinate XYZ like dictator. You have to do XYZ. Like I could see scenarios, but I agree it's very hard for me to meet this threshold because ultimately you're targeting innocent people.
Okay.
What about blowing up a factory? Like blowing up a
Tiberius.
munitions factory?
See, that's a good example, right? But then
Wow.
Corey, I think his position about it being just collateral, it's a good point too.
I'm actually probably going to split the hairs with the points that have been brought up because Gibbs brought up Total War, particularly with like Sherman and whatnot, and there's levels to where like I've openly admitted that I think Total War is an actual viable doctrine, but I will 100% get with Lactoid that there is a hell of a difference between turning someone's sister in a shopping mall into confetti versus blowing up the Prime Minister of Israel. Right, so one of these has a significantly different effect. Like Prime, if you need to shut me down because I'm too close to the sun, feel free to tell me to shut up.
No, it's fine. Oh no, it's fine.
Okay. What it really gets into for me is that like there are clearly things in war that even if you are asymmetrically fighting it, there are things that you can do that are going to make your cause more valid, more justifiable, or if you want to make it just more calculated, more effective. You are increasing the cost upon your enemies, you are, depleting their morale, what have you. But that's not always the case, right? Unfortunately, whenever you do the confetti example, right, more often than not, you piss off your enemy even further, right? That's the problem with like the Hezbollah rockets or the Lebanon rockets, is that you actually tend to like validate Israel's concern for you more. And I get where Lactoid's kind of hammering on that because he's not wrong. The other side of this, though, is that like if I'm the Palestinian, what else do I do? Like, am I going to walk up into doing one of the numerous assassinations that they have attempted to do? Makes more sense to me. I will admit that. But I probably am not going to walk up and try to suicide bomb an Israeli army base for obvious reasons, even though that would be technically far more effective. So yeah, I get where this is something that just doesn't really work logically. I think this is where logic goes to die personally, Lactoid. That's why I'm not 100% with you on this.
So hold on. So the reason I'm talking logically is because like I'm talking about whether or not I find it justified, which I think is going to be a logical question. If the question was, do I understand that people get pissed, and do I understand that people will assign group responsibility because they have this general animosity? Yeah, I get it. Like I understand the reasons for most historical atrocities, right? Like when you go back and you read a lot of the writings of people from like World War II, like I understand the state that Germany was in that led to the rise of Nazi Germany. But that doesn't mean that that I find it justified in the least, even though I understand it, right? So for me, like whether or not I understand the way people act compared to whether or not it's justified are two separate questions.
So okay, and just for the record here, like this is where I get hung up really bad, and I think we're not too terribly far apart on this one. When you go to war with somebody, when you take up arms against them, like for me, that is the abandonment of morality. You're basically saying, I don't want to play by the moral rules. I don't want to cooperate. I don't want to sit down with you at a table and hash out a deal. I want to end you. I want to make it to where you are subject to my will. So either I'm removing you from the board, or I'm making it to where you just don't matter as an entity. Right. And that's where, like, I can't ever really say war is really all that moral or justified from the start. I just get choked up on that way too easily because, like, look at what we do to each other with this. Like, we literally turn humans into fucking scrap metal and confetti. I like calling that justified is really hard for me, even no matter what reasoning you put behind it.
To our friend Pep, you said like you were seemed unsure at the start, and didn't was conflicted. So like listening to all the things that you've heard so far, has that helped?
Not super much. I still think it's like really, really nebulous and situational. I can still come up with ideas in my head for like maybe situations where it would be justified. Like, most of them involve the group being attacked having some level of influence or power, though, where them being attacked would have some sort of impact. Not just like any random civilian, because I feel like the distress caused by inflicting like harm on random civilians can be a motivator, but I don't think that I feel like there's so many other options that should be tried first before doing that. Like people even politicians who aren't related to whatever who don't make the decisions for that. I feel like targeting people who make a choice to be in a government party for like they would be harder to attack, I guess. So that is a facet too. But I just feel like there's just random civilians just seems so like just not good.
Not good.
I mean, Israel took out a nuclear physicist.
I agree. Not good.
Yeah,
Wait,
that's
that's an
like,
example. That's a perfect example, Gibbs, of like where I would find it justified.
You
What
would
was
find
the-
that justified.
What was
taking
the
out-
example?
So they Israel flew in and took out an Iranian nuclear physicist that was developing the nukes, and there was like some international outrage over, hey, they targeted a civilian in a sovereign country, and they're like, well, hey, if they get the nukes, they're nuking us, So but once again, I'm on the side that it is justified altogether. So kind of.
Yeah, but think about it, right? So like that was like that. The goal was not getting nuked. Pretty good goal, and the execution was pun.
One
Was
person?
actually it was perfect, right? One person, and you stopped the threat without like it was justified, right? You justified it through that process.
Right, but
Perfect.
here's the problem with Alliance is they have the means to do that. They have these F-35s. They won the 6 Day War against all odds, and now they've got like a very militarized populace. They're very good. Like I said, I would generally say I'm generally pro-Israel, right? But like when we're sitting here talking about war, yeah, I mean I would say they're just what's that line in Gladiator where he goes, "Oh, these people should know when they're conquered," and the guy turns to him and he's like, would you? Would I? Like, do you really? I mean, who wants to be conquered? Nobody. Like, I mean, they're losing. You got to fight to the death. And at the end, like when you have less means, I mean, your targets has got to be what you can hit. If I can't blow up a tank, I can blow up a restaurant. I can go blow up that church or that mosque or something. That's a much more viable thing, and that's going to get attention, and that's going to cause an impact.
I think what maybe can also further highlight, targeting civilians, or like I think the issues for me with it, like, so does anybody who finds it permissible then to use like bioweapons of like introducing a pathogen then into
I'll actually just head you off on this one, Corey. The biggest reason why I'm just going to say no to bioweapons, no matter what the cause is, because it's more likely, or excuse me, it's just as likely to hit you as it is the opponent you're using.
Oh no, well, so
like
you
you
get
have to
really-
have something very
It's a
specifically
magical
targeted. You know
bioweapon.
this.
You
We
have the
can get-
vaccine, and
You
they
vaccinate
don't.
all your
we can
exactly.
get really targeted with this.
Yeah.
We have the technology.
Yes, we do, but
you-
we also have to admit, like, literally the Soviets and the Americans back in the 80s published all their documents and said, don't fucking do this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
but
got you.
that's not what
Engage
I'm
the
asking you.
principle.
Yeah, like exactly
Right,
the principle
right,
of
so-
like
well, I'll roll with this one, right? Like, it's a lot easier if you're talking like something like chemical gas, right? Because it's far more. I'll say it's far more collective to hit a mass population, but something that's far more targeted because you can hit it like a major city with that kind of stuff, right? We've seen this used before. We've seen sarin used in Tokyo subways back in the 90s. We've seen I can't remember what was Spain. Spain back in the 2000s, right? So this has happened, right? I there's points to where it's like, hey, can you justify this shit? And the only way that I can, and again, close to the sun, is that I'm basically am in that total war mindset where it's not just that guy, and that guy that I think's the enemy. It's his people are the enemy. I don't give a shit about how many casualties I'm causing. They are the enemy. It's a terrible mindset, and I get where Lactoid's just like, oh my god, is he actually saying this? But like, can I blame people for doing that? No. Like, this is actually, unfortunately, most of human history. I don't think we're that evolved, unfortunately.
I mean, sometimes they can get
You
foreign
could have joined
powers
the military as a
to
Union
intervene.
general.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes these attacks can cause other powers to intervene, which can also be a victory. So if you go in there and you blow up, like, oh, I'm going to go drop sarin gas in Spain, and my target's Spain, that's one thing. But if you're trying, like, oh, I'm going to use sarin gas to kill this one specific target that's on this train, and I don't know the exact details, and it kills 50 other people unrelated, and the UN goes, oh, well, we got to stop this conflict that's spilling over, that could also accomplish your goal of stopping, getting a victory. Maybe it saves your people from a total loss. I mean, there's a lot of factors.
I would probably say like Kosovo is probably a good example of this, actually, where they actually brought NATO and the UN into basically stopping their fight and pushing Israel back.
So let's try this. Let's
Mhm.
try to figure out who is an acceptable target. Okay. So I think everyone's gonna say soldiers. Okay, right? Agreed? Yes? Soldiers? Good. Okay. Then politicians, so politicians of the opposing side. Would they be everyone says yes? Galactoid?
I apologize. The question, killing babies is wrong?
Politicians.
Politicians.
Oh, same
Pol-
thing. It could, I think killing. Okay, I don't want to. Yes, Twitch. Killing politicians is wrong.
So,
are you agreeing with Twitch or yourself?
Whichever Twitch admins might be watching, I
Okay.
absolutely agree with them.
So you're saying that like if they're a politician, purely politician, that guy never picked up the gun in his life, right? Declares war and is like, we're gonna ethnically cleanse this of the population.
Yes, I'm okay with killing Hitler. Okay, yes, we're good.
Okay, so you're okay with killing Hitler.
Yes.
What about Hitler's bureaucrats, like his assistants around him that like
Requiring
actually
it to,
execute the
like,
plan?
Potentially.
Requiring it to only involve like actual people who pick up a gun for violence, kind of like, doesn't that just dismiss all kind of like state violence or like like all the kinds of violence that aren't just direct like gunshots? Like there's other kinds of violence towards like a people.
Yeah, I think he's actually working us through like the ladder here, right? So we're gonna hit
Yeah.
soldiers.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
We're gonna hit, like, I think everyone says soldiers on deck. We're talking about politicians. I think we all agreed on that one.
Yeah, I just disputed
like-
nobody's who
right.
never picked up a gun, like no violence ever. But I disagree with the no
Right.
violence part on that.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
exactly.
Bureaucrats
No
are
Yeah.
like the bureaucrats being the next level. Actually, I think is a wonderful part, because I think this is, I would assume,
Mhm.
probably one of you are going to separate on this one. I'm still going to say yes, but does anyone say no on this one? Like, going after the bureaucrats of the institution you find as the enemy is not acceptable target?
Yes, the
Yeah,
guy working at the water plant.
I think it could be. Like I said, if it's actually effective at achieving the goal, and the goal is good, I think it could be.
Yeah, I think it could be as well. Like that's we'll continue with the primes
Right, because when you get
ladder.
further down the ladder, further down the list, what you're going to find is it becomes less and less effective, like in terms of actually accomplishing the goal. And so at some point, like the internal calculation is going to flip, and then it's like, okay, now you're targeting like the manager at the Denny's that exist in Israel.
The masseuse
That
of
is not
Adolf
okay,
Hitler.
right? You're at the point, the
Yeah,
masseuse
well,
of Adolf Hitler.
the
She needs to
masseuse,
be
yeah.
very well massaged in
like-
order to commit his genocide. No,
Mhm.
like it hits a certain point where you're like, well, hold on, like. Are we really going after like the shoe shiner? I mean, Jesus. Fucking
Okay,
Christ.
Right.
but let's actually do the exercise because I think the exercise is valuable in itself, right? So contractors assisting the government. They're not part of the government, but they're contracted to do a thing that furthers the war.
Such as someone who works in a munitions plant, right? Someone who
Yeah,
actually
right.
makes the bullets, right?
How about this? Like that provides construction material used by the regime, right? Within their ethnic cleansing campaign.
If it's valuable enough, like if it's not valuable enough, like in order to like,
So, like-
justify the killing of that innocent person.
So, like, say,
I
like,
can see it
like-
as a valid target. Yes.
so like Caterpillar, you'd be willing with people blowing
Like
up
Caterpillar.
Like
I was just thinking of
Caterpillar,
Caterpillar
yeah.
actually specifically.
Okay, what about the dude that paints Caterpillar machines?
The answer is yes.
What about the dude that buys Caterpillar boots?
What about the dude that grows corn that he uses to feed the guy who paints the Caterpillar machines?
Well, that's
He's getting to where I was going to take this. Like the last level is the taxpayer, just the general tech. Okay, sorry.
So,
Or
okay,
the
yeah.
children that motivates the taxpayers to work.
I wasn't gonna go.
Oh,
Oh
my
my god,
Lord.
guys! Let me do this because I think it's valuable in itself. God,
Sure.
you guys are awful. All right, look, you bloodthirsty individuals here. What now? What about individuals who directly benefit from like the oppression that's happening? So, in the case of the South African conflict, where you're stealing diamonds and whatnot, right? And like blood diamonds and oppressing the population. And this is a store that sells those diamonds, right? Like and like the people going there to buy those diamonds, right? And once those diamonds are bought, they then further the conflict, right? They empower the corporations. They give the state a reason to keep doing this thing because they're profiting off of the thing. So in that case, is I'm not. Let's say the civilians are gone. Like there's like no customers in there. It's just employees. Are they valid targets?
I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to shift that. I'm going to literally shift that on the target spectrum to number 2.
Number 2.
Yeah.
Why? Explain.
Because the number one thing, and this is where I'm actually going to like go into like lactoid thinking a little bit, is that if you're talking about like the logical calculus, when you have like basically the oppressor, or you have the conqueror, you have the colonizer, is that the majority reason that they're doing it is because they believe that they're going to have a better life doing what they're doing than what the alternative is, right? You have to make that where that calculation is a no. It is a negative. Whatever the fuck you're doing to my people is not worth your time, your money, your effort, or your ethical, immoral bullshit. So for me, when you have people who are profiting off of basically my people's destruction, you are literally number 2 on the list. Like the security apparatus is number 1, like the soldiers and the police that are going to defend you, but you're number 2 because you're enabling the people who are coming after my folks. You are the one who profits off of that. If I can stop you, I stop pretty much the whole regime. There's no point in that regime continuing what it's doing, in my opinion.
Yeah. So everyone, like considering what Tiberius had to say, what about people who are directly profiting off? All right. So like, but before we even get there,
You know
like,
where this
like,
leads, right?
yeah,
Every U.S. citizen being a target because we profit off.
Hold on. I'm really not even planning to go that far, but like this is actually the spot that I wanted to land on here. So civilians who never picked up a gun, who didn't make the decision to start the conflict, right, but are enabling the conflict. So in the South African case, like people who are enabling the diamond profiteers to profiteer. Why wouldn't they be a valid target? Or I'm trying to think of other examples in other conflicts. I'll think of something. But like, if they are literally fueling this conflict, let's say they're an important part to fuel the conflict, then why wouldn't they be?
No, I mean, I think like for example, I guess like, what about like American farmers? I want to use that as like in this argument. So there's been arguments that we were talking about kind of ignoring state to states actions, but it's, state to states can be like like unbalanced fights. It'd be much more effective to stop America if we were going to fight. If someone dropped a few dirty bombs off in the middle of the breadbasket and totally shut down our food supply and killed all those people, than it would be to go after the U.S. military. None of those people signed up to fight the war, but they're supplying the U.S. economy, they're supplying the U.S. military. I mean, and if you take out all the farmers and all the ranchers in the middle of the breadbasket, guess what? America's Dunsky. So like that
I
that immediately stops it. And those people didn't do anything to be involved in this.
Yeah, I'll table that the exact reference there because I think that's almost impractical for reasons. But I'll bring it back to like something that's a lot more on hand, right? Are you the guy who sells the blood diamonds in Europe, right? You get them, you buy them from the South Africans and whatever. You're selling them in Europe, right? You're running a Cosmo in Madrid. Um, are you a valid target? This is where actually I'm not gonna say absolutely no, but this is where this gets where I'm just like I'm probably gonna say this is a poor target because more likely when you take the fight to those folks, you draw more people into the fight. Now sometimes you can go with the Gibbs thing where you draw in the people who are going to help you because they don't want to have that problem anymore. But it also more often than not backfires horrifically. You piss off a NATO member to joining the fight against you, and then you've even made your situation far worse. So this is where I'm just going to say like potential target, yes, probably most likely a poor target.
So the reason I'm just trying to construct this is to like narrow down on you guys, like where your a limit is here. So like I'm trying to construct a limited scenario that allows you to like test your limits. So if we're talking, let's say that there's we have a conflict of extraction, right? We can separate from South Africa, and say it's a conflict of extraction within a nation state, right? So not doing what Tiberius warned against, like going to another nation state and drawing them in, right? So it's in a nation state that is extracting value from a population. They're exploiting them, they're enslaving them, using them to draw out some sort of minerals, right? And then construct something of value, right? Let's say jewelry. So, like the entire, like if this valuable item, right, in this case jewelry, isn't selling, then the regime, then the whole point of the regime falls apart, right? So if you attack these stores, right, and make it so that people are too afraid to work at these stores anymore because they might actually die, and that ends the conflict, it's effective, right? Our friend Electro, he doesn't like slavery. Maybe actually, I'm not sure. He doesn't like slavery.
He's okay
And
with the exception.
it's an effective, but these people are in prison, so who knows? But and it's effective strategy, right? This will collapse the regime. But you're attacking people who are just working in the store, working in that store. Like
By effective, I also think there needs, like, again, we have to calculate. Part of the calculation there is like every innocent human life has some like value there, and you're violating their consent and their body and their bodily autonomy and their personhood and all that, and morally valuable shit that we care about. And so like there's
so do
like there's
soldiers.
thresholds to this, right? So like not only does like part of effectiveness is like if you're hurting more people than you're helping, then it's not effective, right? If you're hurting, like if you're intentionally disrupting or killing like 100,000 people, and like
There are 20 stores in this country, right? Staffed by 10 people each, 200 people, compared to the ethnic minority that's being exploited here, which is 200,000 people.
when you
This is a 50. Go
so
ahead.
when you say exploited, like, so we're gonna have to get like
What I just said, they're in the mines.
we're gonna have to like
under
get
the
really,
lash.
yes, we're gonna have to get like really into the weeds. Like if we're talking about like the actual like There's actually like slaves that are working in these fucking diamond mines, and they're going to the shops, and like the shops are selling it. There's like a couple issues. Could you part of efficiency is there an alternative way that you can do this, like disenfranchise the diamond shops without just like killing them? I think that there is.
There isn't.
Okay. So this is just like an empirical disagreement. Then I think that there is, but assuming, I guess, for the hypothetical that there is none, I guess I would depend how many people were enslaved compared to how many people you're killing.
200,000. I gave you that, right? And look, these people were enslaved, so they don't have the ability to shut it down. They are disenfranchised. They're slaves. That's the thing that happens there. So they don't have a lot of leverage to pull here.
If you show me the numbers, if you show me the numbers that this was, and you can assure and the plan shows this would actually be effective, I would consider it. But I need to see the numbers. Because the issue with this though is this leads to quite literally, like, you could justify violence, and I don't do this, but you could do it for almost anything, right? Democrat voters vote for welfare policies that steal money, partially enslaving me through my paycheck, right?
God damn it,
does that justify me?
I'll be right back.
Does that justify me like using violence against Democratic voters? Obviously not. What do you think, Prime?
Okay.
Do you think that justifies violence against Democrat voters? Was Haiti justified in killing all the French people so the French don't come back and try to like?
Absolutely, they were. Yeah, they were actually justified in killing them. And that slave rebellion when they murdered the French, the bloody murder. Yeah.
Even when they took the infants and laid them on the ground and stabbed them with bayonets, that was all good.
I wouldn't have targeted infants, no, because infants didn't actually do it. Infants are a different thing; they're not a valid target. I wouldn't attack kids, but the slavers themselves, obviously, yeah. Right?
Yeah, but if they didn't kill
it was effective. France didn't come back and reinvade them because they're like, damn, that was rough.
Well, the French didn't come back because they had no one there to save because they were all dead. Like if there were still French children there, then the French have an excuse to come back.
I'll put them on a boat and send them off, right? But like, yeah,
where
send them back to France. Send them to
send a bunch of kids on a boat back to France.
I'm not just on. You think I would say like, oh, the kids will be the sailors? No, you can send sailors with them to say back to France. The fuck? Yeah, I wasn't gonna say like put them in like a little dinghy, right, and just like push them off.
Yeah, push them out to sea.
It's a tough world out there. They gotta learn
it properly.
You just said if it was effective, Lactoid. That was effective though, wasn't it? France didn't come back. There was nobody left for them to save. So it was very effective, right?
Unless he's pro-black slavery, maybe.
No.
Maybe that's what he is.
I think that there are. I think in that case, like there were effective alternatives, and I also don't think the human cost there, like killing all the baby infants, like.
That's
I think there would be like effective alternatives to that other than doing what they did.
Agreed.
And alternatives existing, I think, is like an important calculation. There's like there's a threshold of human value that like needs to be overcome whenever you're doing this shit, because we're not talking about guilty parties, we're talking about like innocent parties who didn't do anything at all. And the idea that just like, because you could argue, and materialists and these Marxists often do argue, that just simply by existing in a system, you're partially contributing to everything, right? By existing in the system as a white man, you are contributing to black oppression. Does that make you a target? Well, BLM certainly thought so when they burned down AutoZone. I guess AutoZone, by existing in the capitalist system,
BLM didn't burn down AutoZone. Was that the specific?
No,
specifically this.
Why are we here?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
Okay.
You're right.
Yeah. So the people that burned down AutoZone, I suppose, could argue, and probably did argue, that AutoZone was part of a white hetero patriarchy, capitalism bullshit, imperialism, et cetera, that was deeply involved with the government and was systemically charging institutionally and every form of ali that you can think of that they were doing, and that justified them as a target because they were. I mean, AutoZone is a market actor. They do make money. They make money off. Yeah. They make money off of the cop. They fund the police with their tax dollars.
Lactoid. Your speech is useless here. Okay, like we all agree that that's a ridiculous argument. Okay, so great. We already got there. But that's why I gave you a very specific situation, and tailored it for you, even just for you, Lactoid, my good friend, to show like an example that is difficult, morally a difficult choice that a person would have to make in asymmetrical warfare. So I've already done that for you, and
Okay,
Well-
I want to make it realistic for a second. Let's say that
God.
if a city, like the black population, kicked out all the white people, that Democrats would
Let's
start winning.
shut up. God damn it.
Hold on. And Democrats would start winning, and then there would be police reform leading to less police discrimination against black people. Does that justify deporting the whites from the city?
No. Because we're not in a if it was warfare level violence, from the police, right? When the
Okay.
police were trying to ethnically cleanse, then that'd be different. But to say that there were violent interactions that happen, and so ethnic cleansing, well, then you can ethnically cleanse anyone because there's always be violent interactions. So no.
No, sure.
I-
That's good, right? It's part of the calculation, right? The level
Which is why
of
I gave
harm.
a situation of slavery and exploitation. That's why I already did that.
Yeah, and
right?
I answered
So,
I answered the question.
can
Right? If
I-
you show me the
Okay,
numbers, I look at it.
and I did show you the numbers. So hold on, just to get clear, I did show you the numbers, right? So let's say 2 million of this ethnic minority versus 200 people. Now I need a yes or a no from you.
And you have to kill them in order to liberate
You
the
have
slaves.
to kill them, of course, because I've
yes,
killed them.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
just
great.
trolley
Thank you
problem
so
at that
much.
point, I guess, for that.
Yeah. I didn't want to reduce this to a trolley problem, but I did want to take Prime's example, which was like, hey, 200,000 versus we need to kill 20 people, right? And we were talking about they were working in the diamond shop in that country. And this, I'll put it this way, this one almost is like the break-even point. You're talking very high risk, very high reward, because on one hand, you kill 20 people, you win the war, is the assumption, right? That's kind of hard to pass up. The problem is that if one of those 20 people is grandma and you get an entire family of 20 to take her place because you pissed them off, then obviously you got nowhere. And that's kind of where my issue is with these. This is my issue and my biggest criticism against Palestine in general, is that they take a lot of actions that probably fuel the fire that actually makes them lose further. And this is where just the break-even point for your question is, Prime, at least for me, is that there's some times where I could totally see myself doing that because I'm trying to get over that finish line. But I will be real here, that's probably less than 5% of the time tops, because I'm kind of a coward. I want to make sure that my efforts are successful. And that one is a real roll of the dice for me.
I want to go back to that successful thing in a second, but I'm not going to let our wallflowers get away. So Pep, I drew a situation. What do you think? You're muted, friend.
It does feel like a kind of trolley problem thing, and just kind of pragmatically weighing what like you gain versus what you lose. And I feel like that's going to be probably individual for everybody, but I think that largely my metric for it is going to be like if an organization that you're going to attack is solely like putting things towards an effort that harms the the disenfranchised or the smaller state, whatever, then I feel like it's more acceptable to attack them. But if it's like farmers and like they're feeding everybody, that's less acceptable for me. I feel like there's like some balance to be had of like if somebody is choosing to actively participate in something that's solely productive for a war effort, then yeah. But then between that and like things that benefit everybody but incidentally benefit the subjugation of somebody else, that's much more nebulous. That's so much harder to do, and that's when you really have to get into like the little nitty-gritty numbers where it's like it's so like specific there.
I did buy a Nike shoe, so Corey.
Yeah, I don't think it's justified. Sort of as in my opening statement, I sort of take, at least for now, not yet convinced, a principled stance. So, like, if you're actually targeting civilians or people that I deem innocent, I don't think it's really justified. I tend to operate under the principle, not my saying, of like, to stop a monster, you don't become a monster. That's pretty much my guiding principle.
Baby Hitler.
What about them?
Are you killing baby Hitler?
At a baby level, no.
Ooh.
What if that was the only time you could kill him though, and if you knew that and then you like decided not to do that?
I might disable them.
No, no, no.
You just cripple a baby.
No,
Got
no,
it.
Give him a lobotomy.
We're
Give him
doing,
baby Hitler
we're doing
lobotomy.
this is like similar to Prime's hypothetical. Like you only can kill Hitler when he's a baby, and if you don't, the Holocaust will happen. And in fact, it'll be 10 times worse. What do you do?
What
In
if you do the lobotomy?
in that scenario, in a vacuum, where the future is predicted, and I know that, even that's a high bar for me.
Oh shit!
But
No, I can back Corey on this one a little bit because while I've gone pretty well into the dragon pit, as you guys have seen, right?
Yeah, definitely.
There's levels to where I'll put it this way: it's hard to openly hate someone or invalidate someone for actions they have yet to commit. Like I love the time cop, like the time cop analogy, where it's just like, hey, let's just go back and kill
Great
Baby
movie.
Hitler, right? It's just like Baby Hitler hasn't done anything yet. You think he's going to do something. Let's just say you know he's going to do something. There's still a level where he hasn't done it yet, so it's kind of fucked. Like because you are becoming the monster. Like I get where Corey's coming from on this level.
that's
I really
essentially
do.
Minority Report. It's just like in real time
Yeah.
of like,
Oh,
do you
100%. 100%.
We like kind of are okay with punishing people for like Minority Report shit, though, right? Like conspiracy to commit murder. Like you didn't do it,
Right.
But like you're planning, and we find out
Right.
you're planning.
Okay, well, so if I see the baby with plans and swastikas, then maybe changes my calculation. Okay,
yeah, changes calculation.
but if I see the baby in the diapers and there's no speaking ability, yeah, that's
I'll bite the bullet on this one. Like it's not acceptable to kill Hitler until 1923.
Well, hold on, Corey. Would you abort Hitler?
pre about 25 weeks. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, all right, fair enough.
Okay.
But I would abort just about anybody pre 25 weeks,
Jesus.
even myself.
Jesus, what? I like having you here, Corey.
I appreciate that, and I enjoy being here. But I also like have my guiding principle.
Better than Hitler. I would abort Hitler, but I would not abort you.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, the content you get here at Prime K is be sure to give your primes to Prime. Okay, I just want to shout that out.
All right, so we're gonna dig into this, Corey. You wouldn't do that. Like, this idea. Oh yeah, that's right. This idea you can't kill a monster by becoming a monster, or was that your quote?
Well, yeah. In order to stop a monster, don't become a monster. Essentially.
No,
yeah.
Don't become a monster. Why shouldn't you become a monster or sorry, why shouldn't you take those actions? So like if you need to stop your own oppression, and there's no other way to do so, then you're saying, well, that oppression should continue on forever then.
Well, I understand that might be sort of a logical conclusion, yes, and that's why it's really difficult for me. That's why I try to be super specific with my language of like, yeah, I take issue with like the targeting, and I will make a distinction between like collateral damage versus like actual targeting. And so, using your example, like it might change people's intuitions if I just change it to children. This is just a store that's just visited by children. I'm like, then are people on board with that? I think might change some people's answers. And like, yeah, I don't think it's pretty much ever justified to kill children or specifically target them, even the baby Hitler that can talk.
Okay, all right. So we're agreed about the kids. Okay, let's even.
So then why do we agree about the kids then?
Like, because they haven't taken an action, but the scenario that I drew, those people are like actually taking action. They're working at this company, and they're fully aware with these. Well, maybe I don't know. They may not be fully aware, but then anyway, their presence and their actions are furthering this exploitation. And if we get rid of them, then this entire system falls.
Yeah, I guess that would depend on like tactics, because as the way I sort of understand your scenario,
it's the most effective tactic. Yeah. It's literally the most effective tactic I'm giving you. I've made the situation. It's the most effective tactic.
I remember sort of with the scenario that you outlined with Lactoid. It's like, yeah, I would not bite that bullet. At least for me, it's hard to like if you are going to want to try to achieve an end, and you think justice is on your side. It's hard for me to like get on board with that if you start committing unjust acts.
But the
Can
other
I-
side is go ahead, Gibbs.
I just want to ask a question. Do y'all think, because this kind of seems tied up in what y'all are talking about right now, is do y'all think that targeting a country's economy is an effective tactic?
It can be.
So
Yeah, it definitely can
if
be.
I'm able to disrupt a country's day to day living so much that they don't want to go outside no more, and it shuts down their economy, is that a valid tactic?
Potentially.
So if that means attacking children and making people afraid to go outside because they're afraid their kids are going to get killed, then wouldn't you say it's an effective and justifiable tactic in war if war is held?
Actually, no. Like, and this is where I'm having a little bit of issue with your line of thinking is that we've seen this, right? We had it to where, like during the Blitz, we made it to where people literally sent their kids away off to the country so they wouldn't get bombed, right? But it also galvanized the British people to be like, nah, fuck Hitler. We're gonna make sure that we're going to total surrender. There's levels to where, again, like the actions that you commit, even though it scares the living piss out of everybody.
This is the same thing you talked about earlier. You said you don't really want to talk about state to state because that's the same problem. So if we're
Well,
talking about a
I
person
wanted
without
to,
the means,
right?
it's
No,
much
no.
easier to hit
I
schools
wanted
than
to.
just a military base.
I apologize. I wanted to bring it to the situation because I thought it was a lot more on the ground versus state to state when it came to the original part of the topic. So we're talking more in state to state now, and I think that's fine. So I apologize, but I think that's an acceptable transition at this point. What it is that okay, we are talking, where somebody has the means to use a level of force because you really need state means to go after somebody's economy more often than not. Okay, yeah, we've seen many times that more often than not, when you go after the means of servicing the economy, you're more likely, if not as likely, to piss off your enemies even more, to galvanize their resolve to continue the war, not to end it, even though you're actually functionally decreasing their ability and capacity to go to war. We saw this with both Germany, Japan, and the Brits, is that they had their cities bombed, and while their people were less effective in continuing the war because they had their homes missing and their factories were bombed, their people were so pissed off that they wanted to continue the war even further than what they had to originally. So, yeah, you can make that trade and still lose.
I mean, you can, but you could in theory win. I mean, so you don't think that's a
In
valid
theory,
tactic?
yes. It's just I'll just put it in this regard: the only time that really seems to have really feasibly worked is with nuclear weapons, which is why we probably haven't gone to a nuclear war yet.
Okay. I forget where I was gonna say. I don't know. I just think I'm not pretending that this is an easy answer. I hope everyone knows. I think both these questions that I presented today are quite complex. I just want to make sure that we all understand that, and it just seems weird for me to say absolutely one way or the other. They're like, oh yeah, absolutely, civilians are an okay target. Um, Even like what like the Israeli center example. Yeah, it's extremely hard. Um, and but to say absolutely that civilians can't be a target like that, I just can't.
I didn't say
See it.
I mean I'm pretty close to 100%. I'm like 99.999% there. That's why I said like it's not an impossible threshold. But that's why I said so far.
But you got. Oh, then give us an example of a threshold that.
Yeah, that's why I said in my opening. I can't think of a scenario, but if someone's presented to me, like,
Then
not
it's
even the
okay.
Hitler one. I mean, they really had lost.
Yeah, there's no example. Then you like.
Okay, well, we can think
You
of like
just
some
make-
ridiculous hypo, right? Corey, like, a guy has
Yeah.
1 year left to live. If you don't kill him, the world explodes. Blah blah blah. Right? Obviously,
Uh,
right?
well, okay, so I'll maybe even help you. Like, yeah, if this person's in the process of like getting made in Canada, medical assistance is dying, and they're about to get the syringe injection, okay, and then if I don't push the syringe, the world's gonna end. I would do it in that case.
There we
yes.
go. There we go. We found a scenario.
Great. That'll
It's
be
just
useful.
no practical one, but
Yeah, exactly. All right, I guess this is what I wanted to explore, and it's a really tough subject. Um, and I don't pretend like I know the answers here. I just get angry when my toy gets by me. That's the thing I don't like.
I answered the questions. I answered all the questions.
After I beat you into submission, then yes, eventually,
the
then
reason
yeah.
okay, the reason why I was hesitant to answer and like because I kept emphasizing like just like you did with the Haiti genocide example, where like if there is no other way, but like we really in practical reality, there is always going to be another way. So in practical reality, which is what we're dealing with, just like obviously the hypo I gave to Corey is never going to happen. So it's not like it's barely even worth considering. Like there's always going to be an alternative than just going into the diamond shops and just like, executing the fucking employees in the street. There's always going to be an alternative to that. And if you don't do that alternative, like you're bad, like you did something bad. Even if that is one option you can do, if there's a better option that involves not killing innocent people, you are ethically obligated to do so. I think.
Even if it's going to like be almost impossible, but you think it's a viable option, but it's probably not a very viable. So you have a 30% chance of that working. This other one has a 90% chance. And you're still saying you should do the 30%, even though it's going to cost you and all their lives and their livelihood.
It depends. It depends on, I guess, the percentage calculation risk. I think that there are alternatives to dragging out diamond shop owners and shooting them in the street that have sufficiently comparable percentage success rates that don't involve doing that. So practically speaking, and the same thing with the genocide. You didn't have to kill the children. You could have put them on a boat, right? You didn't have to do this. You could have done that. And if that exists, then you should probably avoid killing the civilians.
So I'm going to go back to the farmer thing. We don't have to use the breadbasket, but we can look throughout history, and there are many times where targeting the farmers has been much more effective than going after like the military and stopping them. You can send a band of raiders in there and go burn the fields back in the day, and it stopped them and killed the families and whatnot. If you look at like Vlad the Impaler, that was one of the things they did whenever the Persians invaded. It was wildly effective as a tactic. So I mean, we can sit here and say these, oh, well and good, but sometimes you have to do things like this in order to stop it, like a major power if you're fighting an asymmetrical warfare. I just don't see how you can sit here and act like targeting the economy is not a viable way to stop a person that's much more powerful than you are.
I can see it targeting the economy. I can even see like burning, like potentially.
Yeah,
burning
isn't the jewelry shop part of the economy? Okay, yeah,
yeah. So I could see situations, but again, like, just going farm to farm, killing them is like, I don't know.
Killing the slavers
in the vast majority of the time, like there is going to be alternatives there than just lining them up and shooting them in the back of the head, right?
Yeah,
I mean, this is like French Revolutionary logic or like communist, like just fucking put them in the swimming pool and just kill them, right? Just wipe them out, Che Guevara style. Just start, just like.
I can't speak to the French. I can't speak to the French Revolution and their level of oppression. Like I don't quite understand it, so it doesn't matter. Sorry, not doesn't matter. I can't just talk on that. But if we're talking about the Haitian Revolution against the despicable French, the slavers who brutally tortured and raped them and murdered them, and were doing all those things and planned to do that for eternity, as far as they were concerned. Then when you're saying that, should they have gone to farm and killed them? Yeah, actually, yeah. Not the kids. There's no reason to kill the kids. Okay.
The kids are going to grow up to be the French that are killing you.
The kids don't have. No, the kids don't have the ability. Like once you're knocking over the regime, okay, the regime is falling. You can save the kids. The kids aren't going to be able to grow up and do the same things, right?
I actually disagree with that, because if you look throughout history, kids have grown up and they've grown up. So like if you go in and you take out a village and they take out everybody but the kids, why they used to go and kill the sons? They'd go kill the sons because the sons would try to avenge the fathers. It's only a new concept in the last 150 years that we're not going to kill the kids are innocent until whatever. That's a new concept. What's been a historical concept is kids growing up getting pissed off, even if they've sitting here and presented the whole time that they were like, oh, we're part of this society, and then they go and try to like overthrow the government or raise a revolution.
I hear you. I'll take the risk. I hear you, and you're absolutely right in terms of like historically that's how it was done. But I'll take the risk. I'm not killing babies. Sorry, this is not. That's my line. Except for baby Hitler. Put that out there. That one baby. You gotta come in, baby Hitler. But like I'm not gonna endorse the slaughter of children. I'm just not gonna do it. But like if I'm dismantling the infrastructure of that regime, in this case, the French Revolution or Haitian Revolution, will be the slavers, the plantation owners, and they have been wiped off the board. Then yeah, like let's send the kids to another French colony nearby. There's plenty of them.
I mean,
But what about targeting a school?
You could also send the adults with them, right? That's the other thing. Like you could just like send away the slavers, or figure
I'm
out
just
some
saying.
figure out some other
I'm
punishment.
saying that's not popular home, but the question is like whether it's like morally acceptable, right? So you can do the other thing. I'm saying it's more acceptable to also
Right.
kill
But
them.
if an alternative exists, like then I think like the worst alternative becomes morally unacceptable, right? If you can deport them without killing them, then if you kill them, like even if killing them would otherwise be justified, it becomes unjustified because you have this alternative. You said before that, or you're just not gonna like endorse like the slaughter of children. I'm gonna give you an example. Let's say there's
Unless they're in the womb, of
let's
course.
say no.
Usually,
Let's
right?
say it's South Africa, and there's 20 diamond shops, and there's 2 million slaves, and there's 10 employees per diamond shop, and they're all kids. And
That's what
and you
that's my
have to kill the
example.
kids.
You change the children.
Yeah, you have to kill the kids, otherwise the 2 million slaves go on being slaves until the day they die.
They're not just kids. They're like 16, 15. No, they're not babies. Is that
Well, no,
Like,
but
they're like
then thank
between
you. You made
12.
it
They're like
easier for me.
Okay, sure.
They're 12. They're 12 and 11. What about that?
We've ID'd them. We've confirmed they're all 11, between 8, 11, 12 years old.
You only have one solution to end the slavery, and that's to kill them.
Only one solution to end the slavery. And they're actively taking part in the slavery.
They're buying the diamonds and selling them.
Yeah,
They pool their money
that's the
together, their
difference.
pennies, to buy one diamond.
They have a
Then
big
I
piggy
think
bank behind the counter.
Then I think they're less innocent. Then I don't think they're as innocent as other. You are actively taking part in the further. It's not like your parents are, right? And then you are like using the resources of your parents that are tainted. You are actively doing it.
So do you kill them?
And yeah, look, my first option isn't to kill the kids, but if there's no way, then yeah, I would definitely I would kill them. 12, 13-year-olds, yeah.
Well, so
Well,
but I'm not giving you shit for all the caveats that you put on that, because it's a tough fucking pill to swallow, and I recognize that. Okay.
And yeah, so that is part of my calculation that sort of Lactoid brought up earlier in terms of like yeah, if I open the door to civilians, which I think I've like pretty much like shut it to like virtually every degree, because like yeah, I think if you open that door, you're just like, well, you're closing yourself to other alternatives. Like I think having at least some principled stance, it forces you to be creative in your tactics and hopefully be more just, if you can actually have some sort of just war in your tactics. Just as you have your line with babies where it's like it's unjustified, which it's an understandable line to draw. But like, yeah, you don't want to open that door. I'm like, yeah, you should be more creative than targeting babies. Just as I think you should be more creative than targeting civilians.
I think someone said earlier though that the fact that war is happening means that the morals have already been it's been a failure of morality, right? So I can if we look at history, I mean, there's a few examples of peaceful protests leading to whatever, and so you could argue that there's always the peaceful option, that we should always do that first, and we can avoid that, and not attack these people, not attack civilian populations. But like the most of those examples end very badly for the people choosing to choose the peaceful option. The ones that do seem to win are the ones that are willing to do whatever it takes, and I think that effectiveness, I don't know, should speak to, the morality of it in warfare, because if warfare is the lack of morals or failure of morality, then, I mean, you got to do what you got to do almost.
Sure. And also maybe a 2-year point, Gibbs, where it's like, what better way to overthrow any regime than to target all the babies?
I didn't even think of that, but yeah, there you go.
No, there you go. No, we'll do it. Okay. So I think we've all it's maybe separate Corey. We've all compromised ourselves enough. Right there.
Well, I want to ask one more question.
Which police are coming? Just saying.
This is for you, Corey. Let's say like I'm a brilliant mastermind, and
You are a
I don't
Lactoid.
believe
You don't need to.
Definitely,
evil.
I don't
Yeah,
believe
okay,
that.
like let's say I'm John Wick, but for evil instead of debates, and I have this belief that like I want to like destroy this country, a country that's an enemy of me, right? The dictator of a neighboring country, and I develop a virus that will kill all fetuses like 10 weeks, into the pregnancy, but will not kill anybody else, and then it's incurable. Is it unethical at all for me to introduce this virus into the neighboring population?
I'll buy my principles. No, it is not. I don't consider them persons.
But
That's
what
what I like.
about
Consistency.
what about property, right? Like,
Well, it's
this,
a whole different. Then totally,
yeah,
Yeah.
no, but like if they're property and that like they are a wanted child, you're like, fuck you and your wanted child, your wanted property. We just kind of.
Can you clarify? And I'm not sure I fully understand your example.
I'm saying that you don't consider them humans, right?
Yeah, I don't grant them personhood. Yeah, just as
Personhood,
just
yeah,
as
yeah.
a person, just as
Yeah,
yeah. You can have as many abortions as you want.
agreed. Agreed. Right. Abortions for everyone. Right. Let's hand them out, dole them out. But those are for those that are wanted or unwanted pregnancies. But these are wanted pregnancies, and you're saying that like it's okay to
Well,
kill
okay.
those as well.
So like, I want to add in a little bit more additional information of like, I don't take issue with killing the 10-week fetus. Okay, that is not unethical in my mind. There's a different, separate ethical question of like introducing a pathogen and whatever bodily autonomy. That is where there's, I think, a more ethical question, where it's like, yeah, there are totally harmless viruses, okay, that will not produce any symptoms. But I would never, I think that it's unethical to intentionally infect someone with a harmless virus. Just as I can totally introduce something, a pathogen that will edit your genome, and there are parts of your genome that you can edit, and you will have no effects whatsoever. And I would say that that is unethical, because it's a violation of your bodily autonomy. So like, there's two separate. I don't see the killing of the fetuses
Okay.
at 10 weeks is wrong.
But you still said you can introduce the virus, though. You told like it's fine.
Well, then I might have misspoke. I said I don't consider that unethical in terms of like aborting the fetus, but yeah, introducing it as a violation of bodily autonomy, I would consider that wrong.
I have a teleportation device that just teleports the virus directly into the fetus. Now you're okay with it. That was the issue.
I'd have to know. I'd have to understand the technology better.
So not only do I hate Lactoid this episode, I now hate Corey this episode. Good job. Does anyone else want to go for
where bodily autonomy begins and ends is obviously like a different story.
Yeah,
like
well, Corey, you don't have to bite the bullet. Just say that, like, and this is where I thought we were gonna go with this: is that like women should be able to decide what they want to do with their own bodies, and that woman didn't decide to get rid of her pregnancy, and so that thing that's wrong. And so no matter like what the delivery system that actually comes up with, that action of killing that wanted pregnancy is a problem.
Yeah, well, so I'm not advocating of like you can wantonly kill all 10 fetuses. Like that's why I will bring in the principle of bodily autonomy. Like presumably, so I'll even go back to my maid example. Like yes, if I can show that a woman is presumably on their way to getting an abortion, and they're like right there, like in the process of getting an abortion, and then somehow this pathogen is introduced. On that zoomed in scenario, I'm not entirely sure that that is still unethical. I'd say you're still technically violating bodily autonomy, but the outcome is still the same.
Okay. All right. Man,
you bit that bullet way too quick without actually like adding on the context beforehand.
Yeah, sure. But I'm hoping at least I made a president that might I have more details to my positions.
I feel like all of us have lead poisoning at this point with the amount of bullets that we've like. There's no way. Okay, all right.
Are bullets even made of lead? I have no idea.
I
Of course you
They
wouldn't.
used to be.
Tiberius, they aren't. They are now.
What? Wait. What bullets are you fucking making with lead? Like most of them are copper or steel based now.
No, the cheap ones are the FMJs.
Oh, new debate topic.
Most ammunition is going to be leaded, at least in America.
Well, until we can get the
I'll have to pull apart my ammunition then. Like usually, like even with the hollow points, you're still talking like majority copper. Last I checked.
Well, there's copper's being rolled out. It's kind of new. It's not the majority, but it's non-toxic. So for hunting, especially, people are moving towards more copper.
And copper's expensive.
It's very expensive compared to lead. and it's some people have questions about its efficacy.
Right. Like I mean, I get some of this. Maybe I'm just talking a little about my ass, but it is 11:30 at night, and also I, fucking have been in the wage cage for 13 hours today. So, forgive me if I'm being a bit of a jackass sometimes.
Gotcha.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
For all, please forgive him for all the war crimes he's endorsed tonight. He was just loopy. He was loopy from work.
No,
That's
no, no.
all.
I'm just talking about the
Uh,
ammunition. I will buy. I bet the bull on the war crimes because, like for real, I struggle with where people just act like the world should be happy and go lucky, and we all should just sit down at the table and get along. Like, there's clearly cases where that doesn't fucking happen.
I totally feel you that like people are separated from the realities of war. This is what I want to talk about. This like the people are separated from realities. I've never been in war. I've never been in battle and combat, right? But I want to try to put myself in that mindset and that understanding, and like it's a fucking dirty thing. Um, you guys should watch the series in case you haven't done so already. Andor. Star Wars series, Andor. Yeah, right. There is a great speech. There's like a guy who's like in charge of the rebellion, this little faction of the rebellion, right? And he talks about like what kind of person like does the thing that he's done, right? And the rebellion, like Luke Skywalker, everyone will celebrate a guy like him who like barely does a fucking thing. But he gets to be the hero. But like, there's a lot of dirty work that put him in a position so he could be that hero. And he's answering the question as to what kind of person does that. He lays it out, and it's beautiful, like tour de force. That speech like gave me literal chills. So if you haven't watched Andor, check it out. It's definitely worth a watch.
It's one of the few
So-
Star Wars series that I've heard good things about.
It's really good. It's really, really good.
I'm digging
Alright.
Ahsoka.
Me too. I like it. I like it a lot as well.
We're ready for that Tuesday.
I think we're getting Heir of the Empire. There's no way they're going to end everything on this last episode.
I think we're also getting Abeloth.
I haven't seen it. Okay. All right. So let's end it before one of you motherfuckers spoils me. Let's. Well, we can go to we're gonna go to a Brooklyn panel. If we have people to join us, and we'll do that. If not, then we'll just end early. But this has been fantastic, guys and gals out there who've been enjoying this content. Guys, if you liked this, consider supporting the channel by subbing to the channel or gifting bits or gifting subs or hype chats, super chats, all those good stuff is very helpful. That's how it allows me to do these things. So we do need your help, and it's October, brand new month. So for people who can be on the leaderboards, we would very much appreciate it. Okay. We'll start with our friend Lactoid giving an outro. Lactoid, thank you for coming here, and like always being a fantastic like interlocutor. Always challenging, right? Like he'll introduce questions. I'm like, yeah, I don't have an answer for that. Which is filling in a debate, right? So thank you for always being able to effectively challenge me, and I hope I can do the same to you at some point.
Absolutely, 100%. You absolutely can. A lot of people here have today, yourself included. So thank you for that, and thank you for having me on. Thank you all for talking with me. If you liked what I had to say, you can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. Thanks
so much. All right. Next, our friend Pep, Art by Pep, who is here and even more talkative than last time, working way up. Right. We love to see it, friend. But yeah, thank you for being around.
Yeah, happy to get to be on again. It was a fun conversation. Yeah, looking forward to getting to do more. I'm Art by Pep on a bunch of stuff. My mom just had a heart attack recently, so I'm opening up my art commissions. If anybody needs some hot ladies drawn, that's my forte. So check out my channels, Art by Pep.
How hot is the art though? Right.
I mean, I do I can do artsy art, but I've done like pinup illustration and things like that too. I don't paint like porn. I mean, I would for the right price, just saying. But mostly I do more tame stuff.
Okay, all right. So we can badger into being an hentai artist.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, put your link in chat and guys, let's support if you can, and you'll get good art. Like you'll be get fantastic art, something to hang up on your wall. I'm not sure where you put this stuff, but like on your wall, I guess. I don't know, whatever. And you'll enjoy it. All right. Let's go to our friend Tiberius. Tiberius, thank you for coming in later on, and you added a lot to the discussion, so I really appreciate that.
I really wanted to be here, and thank you for letting me on. I always have a good time here. It's a great topic, great conversation. So just to wrap this one out, for anyone who doesn't know me, since I didn't do an introduction earlier, my name's Tiberius D. There's kind of a debate on like where I'm supposed to be politically. I consider myself center right, but a lot of people are just like I'm actually closeted lefty. All I'll say here is that I am very proud to be here once again on the Prime Case panel, as I am able to infect his mind, because I have noticed recently that he's agreeing with me more and more and more. And I don't know if I'm moving or if he is, but it's a very, very welcome change. So always a pleasure to hopefully have that corrupting influence here, Prime. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to see every one of you. Pep, pleasure to meet you. And yeah, hope to see you all again soon.
I am a political rock, a North Star. Everything else moves in relation to me. I don't move. Okay. Thank you to our friend Corey, who is here, who would like watch this world burn, you and your children, so he doesn't have to get his hands dirty. Now
Who
that
killed
it's good.
baby Hitler, unless they had the plans and the swastikas in their crib.
Thank you, Corey. We call him a hero because of these actions, right? I'm always willing to do what's necessary. Corey, thank you so much for being here, friend.
Yeah, thank you. Hero or loser, doesn't really matter to me. I can see both sides. What I will say is I was super surprised that when you went down the list of valid military targets, Admiral Gibbs wasn't freaking out. Oh my God, Prime is listing things. Can't have that. Can't trust Prime with lists and valid lists of military targets. But I'm glad he got on board and engaged with it. And yeah, this is great as always, and super appreciative to be invited on. You can find me on Twitch, Corey Campbell 84. I'm a biochemist. I cover science, research, and news. You can find me on X and Instagram and YouTube. It's Corey Campbell. And Admiral Gibbs, Tiberius, Pep, and Lactoid. Always a pleasure, and love you, Brian.
I love you too, friend. And finally, we have our friend Admiral Gibbs. Gibbs, like I was really happy to have you here, especially for that second topic, because you were asking some really interesting questions. You were introducing, like, you were like forcing us to go further down the rabbit hole than I was initially comfortable with. But like, though everything you were saying was like really valid. So shout out to you, Gibbs. So I'm really happy that you were here today.
Yeah, I really appreciate coming on. I really enjoy coming on these. I always like talking with people that have different viewpoints and different experiences in life. I really feel like it's still a way to learn. But yeah, I love coming on these. It's always good discussions, and it's always good when you can like dive deep into topics and like even some dark ones, and like not have to worry about someone like saying something out of pocket. I personally think so. We don't have to worry about that. But yeah, I really enjoyed these things, and that was fun. But I'm Admiral Gibbs. You can find me on pretty much everything as Admiral Gibbs or a variation of.
I like how what's not out of pocket with all the war crimes that we're like, yeah, this is cool. Okay, all right, that part.
Killing baby Hitler, yeah,
That's
totally
just that's,
fine.
that's just something about Twitch's TOS, doesn't it? Really?
But we were respectful to one another, right? We didn't like call each other's mamas out or anything. That's all right. All the people who would murder. Okay,
That's next
all right.
panel.
That's not
That's
mamas. That's not allowed.
all right. So to the audience, we'll see if we can have an open walk on panel. Anyone here can join us. If not, that's okay. Thanks for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion for my community. I know they appreciate it just as much as I do. Have a good one.
Always a
Bye.
pleasure.
Hmm.
Well, that was a wild ride that I enjoyed.
Absolutely.
That was quite a lot of fun. Before I go though, Gibbs, I know I had a question for you. It was related to like the last, not last thing you said in your closing, but the last thing you said on the panel. And fucking somebody please remind me what it was. I did not write it down.
I don't even know.
Oh,
Yes, it was.
oh, I do remember what it was. You're thinking Abeloth is coming?
Yeah, Abeloth is coming. There's some people thinking it's a Kemet guy from the what are the games, but yeah, basically all the language they've used to describe the thing that's calling to Balin, like every language they've used to describe it is been quoted straight from legends. And then
Mhm.
you've also had a lot of these once upon a time things where she says like pretty much all the languages points to it. And then one of the things at the beginning, what was it? The chime, and then it's also with the ones being real big, the celestials being involved. It's
Mhm.
just pointing to it a lot because if Anakin's arisen to take over the job of the father, then what the great evil is really Abeloth, and that's a good big bad that they could have as an overarching thing that moves past Palpatine. So it seems really like they're kind of pushing that.
I get
I'm doing a whole lore video on it here, debating depending on how tomorrow works out.
that sounds great. I'm familiar with the entity. I'm not familiar with the storyline. Like I've heard a little bit about it, but like it really comes off as a little contrived, at least from what people have kind of like thrown at me with it.
So I
Uh,
mean, one of the things is like they're doing one of the new series coming out is supposed to be the Dawn of the Jedi.
mhm.
And like basically the start of the Force is basically the Abeloth story, right?
Right.
So with the son and the daughter being dead, Abeloth is chaos, and so like with them both being dead or like in like reduced forms, like with the daughter, then it really opens it, and the father being gone, it really opens up the door for it. So
I'm
that really
so
seems
glad
like
you
the
brought
next.
this up.
Yeah, so it brings it up, and then they also have already confirmed that the little Mortis, little like spaceships, are the things that are supposed to pick up the people in the beginning for the new Jedi series. So like that's really
Mhm.
deeply tied into like the Abeloth lore.
Okay, so this is a theory that I got from the folks at what I can't remember the channel's name. The guys that review it. Give me a second here.
I gotta bounce, guys.
I'll fire it off as I'm looking it up. But
See
Care
ya.
Lactoid.
yeah, take care. The theory largely just bases around that Anakin.
All right, 1 second, everyone. My boomer self needs to figure this shit out real quick. One. That's my fucking face. What's up? All right. Um, did I wondered lactoid? Absolutely. Every debate. You know how it goes. I'm like the John Wick of Twitch panel debates. I'll come in just guns blazing. Anyhow, thank you guys all so much for tuning in to this Monday's episode of Lactoid TV. I thought it was a great discussion, some and funny as fuck hypotheticals that we were able to go through. So, um, as always, big shout out to everybody who subscribed, gave bits, who was just simply active in chat. It provides me endless energy. So, thank you guys so much for that. Sharing your opinions, always good. If you haven't followed yet, please consider giving me a follow. That way you can see when I go online again. And also I get I get a little follow number, and that like triggers a dopamine response in my brain. So it's like a drug kind of. So it's really nice. So if if it's not too much of a hassle, please consider it. But in the meantime, what we're going to be doing is we're going to go ahead and raid on it out into Prime because he was kind enough to have us on as usual. And yeah, no, I appreciate all of you. If you guys like it, swing on back. We'll have more. Thanks.
Wick. I think Wick, again, all the things, the nice